In the first year of the War of 10,000 Races, demons descended upon Earth, turning the world into a battlefield for countless species. In its early stages, despite humanity having individuals with special abilities, they were at a disadvantage due to sheer numbers. Relying on firearms and nuclear weapons, they barely managed to establish 10 defensive lines against the invading clans. A decade later, 2 lines had fallen, and humanity's defeat seemed more imminent. With no other choice, they fought desperately for survival. Since the war began, the Eastern Alliance had suffered millions of casualties. Now, as firearms ran out and the number of awakened individuals grew, nations started depending on them in battle. To reclaim their homeland and survive, humanity expanded its efforts. Thus, during the decade-long war, large-scale enlistment began in Hua, particularly in the northern border in an industrial city of the Eastern Alliance. A tribute honored Chen Gohai, a 19-year-old who fell at the 10th defensive line, possessing a level 2 electricity ability. Dozens of others were also remembered, including Su Lai, 22, who perished at the 9th defensive line with a level 3 fire ability. Behind the presenter, a list of those who had fallen in the past month was displayed. A senior veteran stood before the crowd, speaking of the fallen as his friends, family, brothers, and sisters. They were the heroes of Yi City and the nation of Hua. Months ago, the 9th defensive line was lost. If the war kept breaching defenses, Yi City would bear the full weight of invasion with no escape. But now it was preparing for a massive counterattack with millions of awakened fighters. The veteran challenged the younger generation, asking what they would do. The crowd roared in response. They would protect their homeland, their mountains, and rivers. Cries for enlistment echoed repeatedly. One by one, people stepped forward, declaring their desire to fight on the front lines. They vowed to defeat the alien invaders and tear them apart. Raising their identification cards, they shouted their intent to enlist. They would go to the front lines. The enlistment continued until it was Nan Ziying's turn. The veteran noted that Ziying, a 20-year-old architecture student with no supernatural talent, had arrived. He asked if Ziying wished to enlist. Ziying declined the opportunity to fight on the front lines. A wave of surprise spread among the forces. He explained that he preferred to serve in logistics. Those around him questioned his decision. Logistics was meant for women, children, and the elderly. The veteran, angered, pointed out that Ziying was in perfect health, had outstanding grades, and that the front lines needed capable people. Did he forget what had been done to humanity? Ziying replied that he had not forgotten, but he had made his choice. The crowd erupted again, reminding him that he had once saved his classmates from a mutant beast horde. Yet now, when the nation needed him most, he refused to fight. But the senior veteran silenced them. He stated that enlistment was voluntary, driven by personal will and a sense of responsibility. Ziying was free to stay behind, but with such high grades, it would be a waste. The veteran handed him the enlistment form and told him to leave. As he walked past, people called him a coward, saying that when the borders fell, he wouldn't survive long. They told him never to return. The next day, helicopters roared above the city. Soldiers marched toward the battlefield, singing war hymns. Their voices declared victory as their duty. Defending their home and nation was the highest honor. Ziying watched from an alley, feeling his phone vibrate in his pocket. Pulling it out, he checked the alerts. 3 new headlines about Ziying City had appeared. The second most viewed article spoke of Yi City's super rookie refusing military service. Online, a user named Polonius commented that no one knew why Ziying had chosen logistics, but it was the wrong decision. Another user, ATR, responded that the logistics division was well-staffed and didn't need young men. Staying behind was just another sign of a weak generation. Mian wrote that the External Alliance had vowed to reclaim lost lands in 10 years, and that he believed in the youth of the East, who were inferior to no one. Calling Ziying a coward, he accused him of abandoning his friends to carry the burden. As Ziying scrolled through the comments, unease settled over him, speaking of how they were all heroes, but in battle, they were like moths flying toward the flame. For an assembly of 1 million troops underestimated the power of the alien races, and in his past life, he joined the army early and went to the front lines to fight the enemy. Eventually, he joined the war command and became an accomplished strategist. As humanity was forced to retreat step by step, he dedicated his life to studying the 5 greatest talents and discovered 5 types of talent trees within himself. But unexpectedly, before he could fully master his talents, humanity was defeated, and he was sent to the afterlife by the hand of one of the strongest beings among the 10,000 races. However, Ziying did not accept this and thought that if he had improved his talents earlier, things would have been different. After all, he needed to protect humanity. But thanks to his obsession or fate, he was reborn, and the talent trees he had cultivated returned with him in their entirety. He had the beast-taming talent, which allowed him to control multiple beasts simultaneously and enhance their bloodlines. The elemental talent, which enabled him to wield forbidden elemental spells such as water, fire, phoenix, electricity, and more. As the greater the elemental energy, the stronger he became. The Azura talent tree, which increased his amplification power with every life he took, until he reached the final stage, where he transformed into an Azura. Fourth was the formation tree, which allowed him to master multiple formations without limits to his abilities. And finally, the undead talent, which let him summon zombies, where the greater the energy expense, the stronger the summoned entity. Thus, improving these 5 talents required a great deal of time and source stones. If he could fully develop these 5 talents and strategize from over 1,000 miles away, he could stand against the 10,000 races and protect humanity even alone. But now if he went to the battlefield, he wouldn't be able to defeat many aliens nor obtain source stones to enhance his talents, so he was taking a risk. The best way to acquire resources quickly was to go into logistics, full of mutant beasts, making it the ideal place to refine his talents. Zion arrives at the rear judgment fields of Yi City, saying he needed to hurry to acquire source stones to improve his talents. Some people murmur that no one expected talents trained during the first year of the war to end up there, but no one actually came to this field to train, since dealing with all the mutant beasts and turning them into rations for the soldiers was perfect, as it also contributed to the nation. But a girl tells Wang not to get hurt. Wang tells Xiao Liu that he just avoids damaging supplies and will be done in a month, while his colleague laments having to deal with the beasts without swords, lamenting that Xiao Liu couldn't help due to her injured leg. Zion arrives and says he is there to train in the test field, since he could help deal with some mutant beasts. Xiao Liu comments that it would be amazing, as they were worried about that, and she would show him the change area. Wang questions why such a young boy would come to the training field at a time like this, but soon recognizes who he is. The woman takes out her phone from her back pocket while saying she just remembered, because he was Nan Ziang, who refused to go to the front lines and was on the news. Her colleague asks why he was heading to the training field when he had fled from the front lines, and Wang says he is a coward trying to ease his guilt for living behind everyone else, and his colleague agrees. Ziang drags his sword along the ground, generating metallic sparks. Xiao Liu mentions that this is the sword used to defeat mutants and that they are fierce, so Ziang should be careful. The young man lifts his sword and says he understands, thanking the girl, and she thinks that maybe now they could make some progress. Moreover, Ziang didn't talk much but was somewhat handsome. But Wang steps closer and tells Xiao Liu to stop dreaming, because no matter how handsome he was still a coward called Nan Ziang, whom the girl recognizes. The woman asks what strength a coward would have to fight mutant beasts, and says he would probably start crying and leave sooner than expected. Ziang finally enters the room. A message explains that he selected the A-level test, and since he had no memory of past tests, he needed to confirm the level. Ziang confirms and initiates the test. Suddenly, lights begin to appear in the room, and a voice states that the A-level test has begun and that he should prepare himself. When the long night comes and humanity has nowhere left to turn, asking whether for the future of humanity, Zion is willing to become the shadow in the night, even if it meant facing thousands of curses. Zion takes a deep breath as he sees the beasts approaching, but he opens his eyes fully focused and says yes, he was willing, summoning the beast toward him as he was about to begin with his beast-taming talent. Zion recalls that after the invasion of the 10,000 races, many animals evolved or mutated due to spiritual energy. In his past life, he fought against the 10,000 races and mutant beasts, including the umbrella bird, famous for its muscle memory. So he leaps forward with his sword, stating that the umbrella bird's weak point was right behind its head, slicing it in half. Zion lands on the ground and commands the extraction of the source stone. Improving talent worked the same way as in his past life, requiring him to defeat beasts like the umbrella bird, gain source stones, and tame more mutants. Zion moves his hand and says he could endure injuries of this level, and if he could dodge all attacks aimed at his vital points, handling everything quickly wouldn't be a problem. The bird screeches as it is cut down. Zion dashes forward, cutting down every beast in his path without hesitation. But one of the birds attempts to bite his right hand. The young man places his left palm on the ground and kicks the beast away. The others lunge at Zion, who only thinks about eliminating distractions first, effortlessly slicing each bird's head with extreme precision. His efficiency increases 5-fold as he tames 5 beasts, just as he had anticipated. The young man quickly looks back, noticing a giant bird among the others. That was their leader, the Umbrella Bird Emperor. Given Zion's current physical condition, defeating it would be difficult. He dodges a beak strike, realizing he couldn't take it head-on, turning and swinging his sword, aiming for its weak points. But the bird blocks the slash with its tough carapace. Zion thinks that its durability had been enhanced compared to what he remembered from his past life, so he firmly plants his feet on the ground, prepares himself, and leaps with speed, aiming to strike again without giving it time to recover. Wang and his colleague Lei watch the training test during their lunch break. Xiao Liu approaches and asks why they weren't going to the cafeteria, but Wan replies that they wanted to see how long Ziyang would keep up the act. Lai adds that he would leave soon since the front line had been pushed back to the 8th defense, and their city, Yi, was the 5th, very close to the border. Wang states that he wouldn't allow the boy to cause trouble there, and if he tried to run, they would take him down. Xiao Liu tells him that an A-level test wasn't any simpler than the front lines. However, their conversation is interrupted by an announcement, stating that participant Nan Ziyang had completed the first floor of the A-level test. Wang asks if they heard that because no one had ever finished that test before, and Ziyang must have quit out of exhaustion. Li agrees until she notices something. The woman bumps into someone's chest, startled by the impact, and immediately falls to the ground in shock. Ziyang had cleared the A-level test with a kill count of 2,000, setting a new record for the first tower test. Wan demands to know why he was looking at them like that, and if he had really passed A-level. Ziyang confirms that he had, and that the demons' bodies could now begin to be processed. Xiao Liu turns and says that now, they should start the processing, while Wan complains about the sheer amount of meat. While bathing, Ziyang reflects that his progress speed was barely adequate, and the experience needed to evolve was more than double. He was at level 2 of the mutant beast taming talent, with 2,000 beasts tamed, and he thinks that reaching level 3 by the 3rd floor alone wouldn't be enough. A signal sounds, indicating that the war report had arrived and that the next offensive round was about to begin. Ziyang considers that the level 7 ability wielder, the son of Punishing Thunder, and the level 6 ability wielder, the Fire Giant, had arrived at the front line, and in his past life, they would be defeated and perish upon entering the battlefield, leading to tragic losses. It wouldn't take long for the 8th defense to collapse, so he needed to accelerate his preparations, as this was a race against time, and he had no time to rest. He had to proceed to the 2nd floor. Wang says he didn't expect the boy to pass the test, and Li responds that given the wounds he had, he would need a long rest. However, he had truly given it his all, and it was an A-level test after all. There weren't many who had passed before. Wang says that trying to achieve everything at once wasn't practical, so it was better to advance step by step. Lai responds that with his injuries, he would need to rest for a few days, and Wang adds that he would report himself as disabled and never come back. However, the girl notices Nan Ziyang approaching with his sword. She says he was back and that they should keep their voices down, but Wang asks why it even mattered. He then tells Ziyang that he had finished his work on the 1st floor while asking what he wanted, and the young man replies that he was heading to the 2nd floor. Wang is surprised that the boy is going to the 2nd floor. Xiao Liu warns him about the giant beasts there and suggests waiting for help, while a man compares the tiger bull to a tank. Ziyang thanks them all but prefers to do this alone. Wang yells that if he was really capable, he should go to the front lines and questions what the point of showing off there was. Xiao Liu watches the scene nervously, thinking it was strange coming from someone like Mr. Nan, because he seemed like the type who feared for his life, hiding in the rear. The system announces that Ziyang has initiated the 2nd floor test, and the boy stands before hundreds of tiger bulls, unleashing his aura. He immediately notices that the 2nd floor was different from the 1st. The pressure was much greater. As he advances with his sword, he tries to slash the beasts, but they dodge the attack. Then one of them appears behind Ziyang, striking him with its horns and sending him flying due to the impact. Ziyang crashes to the ground, struggling to stand up, reflecting that he had no advantage in size or strength and couldn't fight head-on, especially in his injured state. The bulls take deep breaths, salivating hungrily at the sight of him. Ziyang states that they were mocking him, but he wasn't the type to charge in without a plan, standing still in front of the beasts as he waited. An aura envelops his right eye. Then one of the bulls tries to attack him with a charging horn strike. However, Ziyang leaps over it, driving his sword into the beast's head, and shifting it to the left, causing the beast to spill vast amounts of blood from its wound. The other beasts stare at him as he does this. Ziyang states that since level 2 beasts could be tamed, he should tame them before dealing with them, activating the beast taming talent, which releases an energy that repels all the beasts in the room, making them scream under the pressure, and forcing them all to collapse, breaking the ground beneath them. Ziyang warns that this should keep them in line. He locks eyes with the beast holding his sword and says it was time for him to continue evolving and reach level 3 at once. 3 days later, in the rear judgment field of Yi City, Li asks for help dealing with the beasts. Ziyang sits while the workers order the meat to be moved quickly, as there was no more space and they already had enough for the day. The young man had already reached level 6 in beast taming, allowing him to tame level 6 beasts. As he thinks that in just 3 days, over 10,000 beasts had been defeated. It was far more efficient than the front lines, and now he could head to the desert at night, a place where a level 5 ability wielder couldn't escape. And due to the threats of espers and firearms, the beasts didn't attack cities, but taming them was the key to his strategy against the 10,000 races. An elderly man calls Ziyang and asks if they should work overtime to move another batch, as they wanted to send more supplies to the front lines. But Zion declines, saying he needed to leave early today, and the old man agrees. One comments that it had only been a few days and he had already given up. A man complains that, despite staying behind, the tower had progressed thanks to Zion, but the woman says he was only causing trouble with her. The man responds that she was the problem there, always talking behind Zion's back instead of working. While the young man walks away, Xiao Liu calls out to him, saying they had caught up with the test tower's delay and that he should probably take a break for working so hard. Zion thanks her and says he should go now. Then the girl tells him to rest, as she wouldn't hold him back anymore. Outside the border, a soldier orders them to clear the way and not block the road, because they had retrieved the wounded from the front lines, and they needed urgent medical attention while driving down the street. Zion comments that the flow of wounded in the 5th Defense indicated the state of the front lines, but the civilians point to the sky, speaking about the rockets flying overhead, as if they were gaining the advantage. But it wasn't about gaining the upper hand. The situation was critical and required significant support. While Zion thought that the day the defense would collapse was near, he places a mask over his face and his sword at his waist, walking through the snow, reflecting that this was no time to waste. In the frozen mountains, a soldier asks why the truck was stopped, as it was quite dangerous this time. And when he steps out to check, he sees that the truck had broken down, and he needed to figure out what was wrong, as of all times, the battery decided to fail them now. A blonde woman says they should leave the truck there and return in the morning, as with the mutant wolves nearby, safety was the priority, and the soldier agrees with her. But he notices a mysterious figure falling outside. Zion moves forward in the opposite direction of the truck. The blonde woman asks who he was, wondering why he was heading towards City A at this hour of the night. Then she shouts for him to be careful because there were giant mutant wolves ahead, and they were extremely dangerous. A girl says that the director called as the city had wounded people waiting for medicine, but the blonde replies that driving now was too risky, and they couldn't just leave the man alone. Her friend responds that it was a nest of giant mutant wolves, and if they attacked, the Herd Collection team wouldn't be able to defend themselves, so they couldn't worry about others. The blonde sets the conversation aside, places her hands on the wheel, and says they should go, but both are surprised by what happens in front of them, hearing a bloodied team member lying on the ground, pleading for help. The blonde sees in the rearview mirror the presence of a mutant wolf, and her friend orders her to drive, as a giant iron wolf was behind them. However, the wolf attacks the car's windshield. The girl prepares her weapon and urges the blonde to hurry and drive. Nervously, she orders them to open fire on the wolf. From afar, Zion hears the gunfire and reflects that it was coming from the Herd Collection team's direction. But he was surrounded by wolves, realizing that they weren't just attacking over there, they were ambushing him here as well. However, this was an advantage for Zion, saving him some trouble. After all, the more concentrated the spiritual energy, the more intelligent the beasts would be. The truck's windows were punctured from the gunfire, but the wolf had crouched down to avoid the bullets. The girl with the gun tells Xiao Nan to be careful. Xiao Nan responds that she's fine, and her friend comments that if they defeat or drive away the wolves, Nan should drive to the city. The blonde simply agrees with the given orders while gripping the wheel. Zion was slicing through all the wolves with his sword, but he senses a strange presence and turns, questioning if the Wolf King was beside him. Because if he could take down this pack, the medical team could be saved. And so the Wolf King approaches him, its metallic mask instilling fear in the surroundings. Zion states that since the leader had appeared, his battle should begin. A sudden flash illuminates the area. An aura envelops Zion, instantly startling everything around him. That was his beast-taming talent. The young man nods as he looks at the Wolf King, releasing a vast aura against all the beasts present. Tentacles emerge from the ground, striking the wolves, holding them down to prevent them from fighting. The Wolf King senses something unusual in the attack, then howls to his subordinates, summoning more and more wolves to confront Zion's power. The wolves unleash a crimson aura toward the young man, but he continues radiating his own energy. Standing face to face with the Wolf King and his followers, Zion states that he would shoot the horse before the rider, capturing the king to subdue his bandits. The wolves look up at the sky, shocked by what they see, as an immense bluish aura rises from the ground, lifting Zion. Zion leaps from this aura-infused tree branch as some wolves are flung away. He prepares an attack with his reddened hand, as his priority was to tame the leader. The wolf howls again in defiance, its red eyes glowing even brighter. But Zion places his hand on the Iron Wolf King's head, releasing his soul and commanding it to be tamed. Zion's aura begins clashing with the Wolf King's, which starts losing its consciousness due to the battle. All the wolves lower their heads in submission at what they witnessed, as a massive tree of pure aura branched out into the area. The girl continues firing at the wolves, and tells Xiao Nan to hurry up and drive, while the girl steps on the accelerator and says they were getting out of there. However, a sudden silence takes over the area. Xiao Nan asks why the truck wasn't starting. Her friend panics, saying they were done for. The wolves keep walking behind the truck, causing an impact that pushes the girls forward and shatters the car's glass. The wolf on the windshield prepares to bite both of them, along with two other wolves at the driver and passenger windows. The girl with the gun asks what was happening there, and if she was seeing things because the wolves suddenly seemed cute. The wolf quickly turns its back, leaving with the others, heading towards Zhang's mountain. The girls look out the window, still processing what had happened, and the three wolves reunite with the rest, lowering their heads in response to what they witnessed. Because Zion was standing atop a rock, surrounded by submissive wolves, Shounen questions if all these giant wolves had really been tamed, and her friend comments that for a single person to tame hundreds of wolves, he must be of a high level. It was incredible. Zion had reached level 7 in beast taming, and says that for now, the source stones were too dangerous, and he didn't need to waste time taming them, as he hadn't expected to have a pet so soon. He strokes the Wolf King's fur and says that all the wolves seemed well behaved and should disperse for now, as he would summon them when needed, ordering the Wolf King to remember not to attack humans. Since there were many uninhabited areas near Yi City, he should subdue all the mutant beasts in those regions. After all, for his grand battle plan, he needed to find a way to build an army of 10 million mutant beasts. And thanks to his actions, the herd collection team now had a safe path. However, he receives a message from the factory and questions what it was about. The message states that there would be an emergency meeting at the testing grounds, and he was required to attend. But Zhang simply wonders what could have happened. An old man shouts that everyone at the Yi City branch was a disappointment, as they had progressed quickly to relieve pressure on the front lines, but only they had fought high-level mutant beasts. The veteran says it was the first time Yi City had encountered level 4 or higher beasts, and fighting them required a lot of time. However, the officer merely repeats about time, asking if he understood the gravity of the situation since the frontline troops were close to starvation, and the stock of mutant beasts was dwindling, so to feed the military on the front lines, they needed high-level beasts. The veteran says he understands and will send more people from Yi City to continue this difficult mission. However, the officer states that it wasn't necessary because he had observed all of Yi City for half a day and found no one useful, so he would delay military supplies. Zhao Liu argues that level 4 mutants were too much for Yi City, but the officer says that progress was slow because of a deserter, and that the city was truly irresponsible since it couldn't handle any real responsibilities. Wan yells that she's had enough of the officer and asks if he thought he was special since her husband and 3 sons had lost their lives on the front lines for the country. Crying, she continues, saying she works 24 hours a day just to maintain this supply routine, so he had no right to devalue her efforts. The officer sneers at her, while one of the soldiers activates his ability and asks how she dares to disrespect an officer, while Wang demands to know what he was going to do about it. The soldier prepares to punch Wang with his enhanced strength, but Zhang suddenly appears and strikes him in the chin. The soldier falls unconscious as the officer breaks into a cold sweat. Zhang steps in front of the officer and states that violence should not replace argumentation. Lai and the station members cheer, saying that little Nan had finally arrived. The veteran turns to Zhang, wondering what he was doing there, as he had just taken down a level 5 ability user in one move. However, the officer questions who he was, drawing a gun and saying that Zhang had stressed him out by disrespecting his superior, and asks if Yi City was planning a mutiny. The young man responds that so this was the officer, the traitor who made a fortune off the war and was later identified and publicly executed 20 years into the War of the Thousand Races. Lin Yukai, the leech of supplies. In his past life, he had smuggled vast amounts of military supplies across the border, causing significant losses before he was finally discovered. He had targeted Yi City's processing speed to defeat higher-level monsters, improving his own profits in the process, which was no surprise coming from Lin Yukai. He needed to deal with him, but before doing so, he had to drain all of his resources, so he tells the officer that there were no rebels causing trouble there. The workers question the point of pointing a gun at them, as they had already sacrificed enough on the battlefield of the 10,000 races. Everyone shares their situations, and Yukai realizes this wasn't ending well for him. He had assumed they were all old and weak, but they still had something left in them, and he wonders why the boy looked familiar. Noticing that he was the deserter from the news, Nan Zhang, hiding like a coward there, having refused recruitment and attacked a soldier. That meant he was to be executed. Zhang says he doesn't care about that since he was the one who processed tens of thousands of beasts, and if he were to die, progress would slow down, so he simply stares at the soldier. Both the veteran and Yukai are shocked that Zhang was the ace of the test tower. The young man explains that high-level beasts could affect the human mind with their energy, and if Yukai wanted to send him to the afterlife, he couldn't do anything about it. This makes the officer realize that the deserter had turned the tables on him. He knew too much about beasts. and from everyone's reaction he wasn't lying, so he couldn't afford to take that risk. However, since he was willing to accept this, everything was perfect for Yukai. Yukai agrees, saying he would send 5,000 level 4 beasts, and if Xiang defeated even one, he would let it slide. But if he failed, all accounts, old and new, would be settled. Xiang accepts. The workers question him about the military promise, and Xiao Liu asks if he was going to do this alone, saying she could help, but Xiang tells them not to worry. While thinking that among level 4 beasts, this particular type was stronger than the rest, with high defense and mental disruption abilities. But it wasn't just about the supplies, materials were precious, and Lin Yukai would do anything for money. Thanks to him, these demons were now the perfect material. So first he would defeat all the beasts and enhance his Azura talent. Then he would eliminate Lin Yukai and all of his connections at once. The next day, a soldier arrives at the logistics area, saying that the 5,000 level 4 beasts had been delivered, and an old man beside him says he will check on Yi City. Xiao Liu speaks with the officers while the old man pulls out a notepad. He says he will read a military order stating that Yi City's logistics division soldier, Nan Xiang, was assigned to process 5,000 level 4 beasts. Therefore, he must complete the task within 1 week, following the time regulations, and would be under Yukai's authority. He was accused of insubordination, inciting a workers' rebellion, and attacking an officer. Any of these crimes would lead to further consequences. Thus, he would be executed immediately by the firing squad. The old man mocks Xiang as he conjures a weapon in his hand. Everyone questions the old man's decision to call the firing squad, but he asks if they hadn't agreed so easily when the military order was given yesterday, and if they were afraid now, because when the time came, it would be his responsibility to personally execute Xiang, so he would take his time enjoying the process. He then tries to touch the young man's shoulder to hand him a letter. Xiang takes the letter and says that these were just words coming from a mere messenger. The soldier calls him an arrogant brat, but the messenger says they were forgetting their manners in the face of death, and that they would now begin the boy's test. Xiao Liu warns that high-level beasts required anesthetic smoke, but the component was at the front lines, so Xiang needed to be careful, and he agrees. As the three depart, the remaining people question whether mutant beasts had mental attacks since Xiang seemed confident like a psychic. The messenger tests his psychic abilities on the boy, but there is no reaction, so all that was left was to wait for Nan Xiang's execution. He would likely go insane from their influence, unable to think as his defeat approached. The messenger grins maliciously. Then he says that, now that he thought about it, his boss was greedy because this kid didn't seem to be anything special. He really did appear to be just a deserter and a waste of time. After executing this child, all the rewards would end up in his hands, so he asks the guard if he knew how to report to the boss since he was sent for that purpose. The guard responds that he should make sure to report everything that happens there truthfully. At the same time, Xiang observes that the level 4 mutant beasts were just as expected, physically immobile, but their mental power was formidable. He looks into the eyes hidden in the darkness, turning to the left and feeling surprised, because the image formed a skull, and Xiang remarks that they could summon vivid illusions. The skull lunges forward to attack the young man, transforming into flesh and bone as it advances to grab Xiang with its hand, surprising him and squeezing tightly. But Xiang's sword pierces through the head of a creature. The young man runs and strikes its head again, saying that they were mere illusions. Therefore, they couldn't control his mind, and were nothing more than targets for him to strike. After all, he needed more dark aura to improve his Azura talent, so it would be better for the creatures to bring out their best abilities. However, Xiang is caught off guard when he looks down as his foot is being consumed by a dark energy, and he remarks that this was exactly what he was looking for. The energy binds him in place as a creature approaches. It tells Xiang that he was too exhausted and could live much more easily. After all, the boy had already paid the price and should think of those who had already passed, his mind recalling his father. But it questions whether this was truly righteous, as he had received power from the 10,000 races solely for revenge. Protecting humanity was a joke, and Xiang had already seen his own future, so the creature speaks of the worst possible outcome. But the young man grasps the aura and suggests a pause. Xiang pulls the aura away from his head and says that his revenge against the 10,000 races would happen, and humanity's fate would be decided by them alone. The young man surrounds himself with his tree, and the creatures ask how he was resisting this, and if he would end up as a wicked man consumed by it. Xiang states that when he activates the Azura talent and enters Azura form, his strength and mental power increase exponentially, and dark energy was the key to enhancing it. He moves his hand, and the tree begins to surge against the dark energy, consuming it. The tree absorbs the energy and then begins consuming Xiang's body, shattering his mask, causing the young man to scream in pain as he absorbs the power. Inside his home, the officer complains about being pressured and spending too much money to keep his party under control. A maid pours wine into his glass and tells him he was working too hard at the end of the world, asking if he would like to spend some time with her. The officer notes that demand was rising not only in Hua but beyond, so it was best to make money quickly before everything was drained. But his capable subordinates had large appetites, and when cuts happened, they would seek revenge, so he needed to be careful when dealing with them. He downs his glass of wine while complaining about his headache. The maid puts away the wine with a smile while the officer wonders where he could find a stable source of high-level mutant beasts, and his phone vibrates. He answers and tells the caller to speak. The person on the line mentions the military order from Yi City. The officer tries to dismiss it, saying he doesn't care about Nanzaying, but the person informs him that they returned to Yi City today, and that he had completed everything in just 4 days, shocking the officer with how quickly it was finished. The soldier confirms, stating that the mission to neutralize 5,000 beasts had been completed, and all of it was done by Nanzaying. The officer becomes excited and asks if Zaying was still there. The soldier reports that he seemed to have left, but he was in good condition both mentally and physically. So the officer orders them to keep an eye on Zaying, and the soldier agrees while the messenger thinks about how the boy actually completed the mission. Because last time, before leaving, he had investigated and confirmed that Zaying had no psychic abilities. So how had he done all of this? Zaying's Azura talent had reached level 5, unlocking the malignant alloy blade. He thinks that a few days had passed, and his physical and mental abilities had improved. However, even without reaching level 6, his first ability from the Azura talent had awakened. This meant he could venture deeper to tame beasts and accelerate his plan. Wang says that their companion Shounen had helped a lot, as otherwise they would have been looked down upon, and Lee agrees with her, because it was clear that they couldn't handle this on their own. Yet they were being used while the higher-ups acted high and mighty over the weak. Zaying reflects that he had forgotten about these people, and they must not be happy that he had completed the task, since improving his Azura talent had heightened his perception. Meanwhile, the messenger thinks that Zaying was an ability user, and now that their revenue stream had been cut, no one dared to insult him. However, he still needed to investigate the boy. The soldier taps the messenger's shoulder, stating that Zaying had completed his tasks, and that the man was now acting against the chief. And if anything suspicious was seen, they should wait for the boss to finish using him. Since there were still many remnants of mental power there, he would interfere if they acted recklessly. The messenger yells at him to stop spouting nonsense, saying he would personally report to the boss when the time came, releasing a dark aura against Zaying. The young man thinks it's a psychic aura trick, wondering if it was an attack on his mind, but the messenger miscalculated. Zaying reflects the aura back and says it was the perfect time to test his Azura talent. The messenger is shocked, suddenly finding himself in an empty void. He says he should have invaded Zaying's mental system, but now he didn't know where he was. He thinks that after invading a mental system, he should see entities, but he couldn't see anything in the surrounding darkness, until someone calls out to him, catching him off guard. The presence comes from behind, beginning to take shape. The messenger realizes it's an entity condensed from dark energy, its face forming into that of a demon. He screams, asking what level of ability the young man possessed, as he had clearly investigated beforehand. In the end, he just wanted to know who the hell was Zaying. But a dark aura begins creeping up his feet, and the face tells him it didn't matter who he was because the messenger was the only one foolish enough to invade his mental world. The messenger is struck by dark energy and begs for mercy, but the voice tells him to put on a good show as the energy engulfs his head. The aura finally subsides, and the messenger screams that everything belonged to him, and he didn't care what anyone else said. He runs in circles around the soldier, shouting that Lin Yukai was an idiot and that he would handle everything himself. The maids whisper among themselves, wondering if this was the pressure of leadership, because he seemed completely irresponsible. The soldier says he might have been affected by the remnants of mental power, while the messenger keeps screaming that anyone who touched his money would lose their life. Then the soldier snaps his fingers and tells him to keep tarnishing his boss's reputation, before delivering a punch that shatters the man's head, shocking all the maids who had been watching the scene. The man apologizes, saying the messenger had been influenced by the power of the monsters, and he had no choice but to execute him. He then walks towards Zaying, thinking that the boy had fainted and seemed mentally disturbed. However, he didn't want to take the idiot's life after all. This child was now useless. Still, he needed to report to his boss first. He leaves, telling everyone to keep up the good work and hold things together. Zaying smirks slightly as the guard exits, because he had just reached level 6 in his Azura talent. After some time, Zaying opens his eyes. Surrounded by the maids, Xiao Liu says the boy had finally woken up, and Li calls for all the workers to come see him. The young man sits up in bed and asks how long he had been unconscious. Liu tells him he had slept for 2 days, Wang adds that he didn't need to worry anymore because everyone should get back to work, or they'd never finish. Lai tells Zhang to get up and eat something. Zhang asks if more beasts had been sent. Wang replies that they hadn't, as half of the group was sent to assist other factories, and the military needed twice the amount. Since the battle at the 9th defense line had ended, and they were pushed back to the 8th, completely defeated, the situation was dire. Both in the sky and on land, the soldiers stood no chance against the monsters of the 10,000 races. Even the ability user known as the Son of Punishing Thunder barely survived, losing an arm, and the fire giant sacrificed himself for the country. Zhang reflects that the defeat was inevitable, but he never expected the collapse to come sooner than in his past life. Wang tells him that the officers left on a special mission 2 days ago and reported that the officer had lost his life due to monster manipulation, leaving Yi City inoperative. So compared to what had been mentioned before, what was coming next was even more crucial. Zhang asks what it was. She calls Xiao Liu over, who approaches Nan Zhang, telling him that he had been unanimously elected as the leader of Yi City's test tower, and that this was an official appointment from the higher-ups. Wang says it was recognition from everyone for Nan, as they had all wronged him in the past, but now everyone should address him as Chief Nan. Xiao Liu calls him that, and the workers declare that they would do their best. The girl adds that the leader's tasks were now heavier than before, with the group cut in half and military supplies needing to be doubled. She asks how half of them would even stay on their feet after a month without eating, drinking, or sleeping, wanting to know what Zhang would do about the workload. Since work efficiency wouldn't change much, this was already her best effort for now, but Zhang simply reflects that with 2 abilities, efficiency could be doubled. And that way, with regular breaks, new tasks wouldn't affect them. Plus, with his new position, draining resources from Yukai would be much easier. Xiao Liu turns and says that the task was impossible and unreasonable, so they should appeal to the leadership, but Zhang says he understood everything. Everyone turns to him, surprised. The girl says she knows the immense pressure he's under now that he has taken on this role, but Zhang hadn't fully recovered and couldn't act recklessly like before. Zhang places his foot on the ground and says he understands everyone's concern for his health, but they could finish this task. And the workers agree with him, shouting that they would follow his lead until a shadow dashes by. Zhang thinks that speed didn't belong to anyone in his group and rushes outside, wondering who it was. He runs out, arriving at a place with several trucks. A girl points a gun at the back of Zhang's head and says he was bold for chasing after her. He had some guts. From now on he shouldn't move. She would ask, and he would answer. Zhang simply wonders if she was a true expert. The woman asks how many monsters were in Yukai's next batch, and whether they were delivering or retrieving them. The young man tells her it would be better to ask Yukai and his gang about that. So the woman asks why he wasn't cooperating and tells him to answer her question seriously. Zhang imbues his hand with dark energy and thinks the girl got distracted. This was his chance. He turns, activating his Azura talent, forcing the girl to sidestep to avoid his strike, but she fires a shot at his hand. Zhang questions who said he was Yukai's accomplice. She had caught the wrong guy, and the woman asks why he was helping him then. The young man responds that he wasn't helping but simply completing a task assigned to Yi City. He may be a traitor, but Yukai was still his superior. The girl says she couldn't believe he knew so much about Yukai's dirty dealings, but she questions why he didn't join the special forces to take Yukai down together, revealing herself as Zhang Yuan from the 8th Defense Line, Intelligence Division 2. Zhang just stares at the woman's hand. Then he simply says that he refuses the offer. Yuan asks if he was choosing to become part of the problem. Zhang denies it, saying that he needed to deal with Yukai, but not now, and not with her, because she hadn't considered the consequences of going after Lin Yukai. The girl, surprised, asks what he meant by that. The young man says that if she was thinking of getting rid of Lin Yukai, she had 2 options, either eliminate him or report him internally. If he died and there was more than one person in his group, how would she silence everyone involved? He asks what she would do if the plan failed. In the case of an internal report, investigations would take over and humanity would suffer another defeat, because the rumors of internal conflict would cause discord at all levels. And this would lead to an inevitable reaction, chaos, with citizens fleeing from Hua. Zhang Yuan feels pressured and asks what she should do, but Zhang simply tells her that he would take care of it. She asks how he planned to do that. Because Zhang was just a deserter, and even she couldn't handle them. She presses her finger against the young man's chest. Zhang releases his Azura energy and asks if they weren't just fighting moments ago. A week ago, she had the advantage, but now, what were her chances of defeating him? Zhang Yuan notices that his response was unusual. Just a week ago, he had been much weaker. She wonders if his ability allowed him to continuously strengthen himself. Zhang tells her he has said all he needed to, and since she was an intelligent girl, she would know what to do, because he would be the one to deal with the scum known as Lin Yukai. Zhang Yuan complains that he was too stubborn, but she would reluctantly accept his request. However, success was the only option. The young man turns away, bored, saying that this was their agreement and he would keep his word. But once Yukai was dealt with, it would be up to her to secure more beasts. The girl is surprised and asks how many beasts he needed now, as his current strength wouldn't be considered weak, even on the battlefield. He was constantly growing stronger while keeping it a secret. Yuan questions which side he was truly on. Zion tells her she's overthinking. Of course, he stood with humanity, but to take control against the 10,000 races, he still wasn't strong enough. The young man bids farewell to Yuan, telling her he had already said enough. The girl says he seemed like a strange guy, but he wasn't a liar, so she should believe in him. A few days later, the officer states that Chief Nan had completed his latest mission and should now be assigned the next one for Yi City. Xiao Liu comments to Wang that the difficulty was increasing as they were now dealing with level 5 beasts, while Zion follows the officer in silence. She then turns to Zion and asks what he would do this time with the beasts, but the young man simply states that he would take care of the mission. The officer laughs and says that Chief Nan was truly ahead of his time, while reflecting that he was far more competent than the deadweight messenger, since he refused bribes and had made the supply groups behave. With the war going poorly and the doubled military supply orders, this was an opportunity granted by the gods to him. He pats Zion on the shoulder and tells him to work hard. If he needed anything, he only had to ask, because if he performed well, he would personally receive medals. Zion points his finger forward and tells Liu and Wang to take everyone to the station to work. The groups gather to move the level 5 beasts to the first and second floors of the test tower. Seeing this, the officer remarks that the work atmosphere was good, and that he wouldn't disturb him any longer. Yukai leaves the area, and Zion thinks that everything had piled up to this moment. He activates his Azura energy, saying he would enhance his talents using Yukai's efforts, wielding the malignant alloy blade to attack the monsters, and activating his skill to disrupt the level 5 beasts. He swiftly draws his sword, cutting down everything in his path and gaining plus 1.5 for each defeated monster. Zion continues slashing as he leaps into the air, reaching 24 points out of 7,200 needed to enhance his ability. On March 20, at the 8th defense line in Eagleland, a brutal battle lasted 4 hours, where 800,000 soldiers fell and 50,000 espers perished, leading to a collapse. Zion appears, wielding the malignant alloy blade and Azura berserker form to cut through the beasts. On March 22, the northern 8th defense line of Glacier fell, with 600,000 soldiers losing their lives. But Nan was also there, cutting down the beasts that invaded his world. On March 24, the southern 8th defense line of Glacier was wiped out by the metal assassin race in just 1 hour. A soldier stood in front of a beast, only for the young man to appear once more, slicing the monster in half with his Azura ability. 2 days later, the 8th defense lines of France and Kawasaki collapsed in just half an hour. One of the fallen soldiers pleaded for the annihilation of the 10,000 races, but Zion appears, saying it was enough, releasing his energy in an explosive burst, creating a massive tree as he roars to unleash his full Azura power, using the highest level ability of his talent. A dark aura envelops the young man. This was hell on earth mode terrifying the mutant beasts in the area. Zion declares that in that case he would test this power on the beasts, raising his sword toward them, then lowering it, unleashing a slicing shockwave that cuts through everything in its path. The young man wonders if that was the full extent of his power, as it was exponentially greater than at the previous level. He deactivates his Azura ability, now covered in blood and dark energy, stating that the stones he had gathered over these days could now be used to tame the beasts, and while Lin Yukai might have been rich, he would have no life left to spend it. The supply groups received the news, discussing how the Eastern Alliance, the United States, and the entire country were barely holding on, now desperately recruiting soldiers as young as 16. Zion reflects that the collapse was happening quickly, and despite his Azura talent, he was still just one person, so he needed to act fast. Wang notices him and asks how he finished so quickly. Lin Yukai approaches, commenting that Chief Nan's speed had increased once again. He says he's impressed and asks what official position Zion would like to receive. Zion simply says that he wanted him. The officer asks what he meant by that. Even his soldier trembles at the words. The young man continues his sentence, saying that he wanted him to go to the northern desert at night and bring back several iron wolves to swiftly eliminate the beasts. Lin Yukai praises Chief Nan for having great stamina and courage, something he admired. Zion bows to Yukai and says he will leave, but the officer tells him not to worry, embarrassed by the gesture, as he thinks that Zion is just a small rabbit and that if he tries any tricks, he will meet his end. Zion, in turn, considers him nothing more than a parasite in a war. On a full moon night in the northern desert, Zion prepares for combat and says he remembers well, when espers awaken, the 10 races attack swiftly. He needed to be more discreet, so he called his wolves closer, ordering them to bring reinforcements as they began to howl. An entire pack of wolves sneaks up the mountain to see their king. Zion had reached level 7 as a beast tamer and remarked that the requirements to level up were increasing exponentially. At the same time, 3 trucks approach the snowy northern mountains. A soldier warns Lin Yukai that he has detected 1,000 mutant wolves ahead and that they are at the limit of the spatial portal. Yukai grabs his maid and orders them to load the wolves into the nano cages and finish them off quickly to take them home. However, a noise is heard outside the vehicle. The officer turns around, asking what that sound was. The soldier has no answer and sticks his head out of the window. He notices an entire pack of iron wolves ambushing the 3 trucks. Lin Yukai asks how this is happening if it never occurred before, saying they should teleport to a safe place immediately. The soldier explains that the teleportation only works within 1 kilometer, and the beasts are at least 10 away, so the only option is to drive forward. He revs the engine and tries to escape the beasts, driving without looking back. Watching from afar, Zion says it is the perfect time. Since it is a full moon night, he leaps from his position. Landing in front of the truck, he declares that he will tame some wolves and exterminate pests one by one. Zion touches the ground and activates his beast-taming talent. He imposes his will on all the wolves attacking the truck, taming them instantly. The 1,000 wolves are subdued quickly, and the officer exclaims that there is a beast tamer among them. Shouting in amazement, he asks how this is possible, but his soldier says he has never heard of such a powerful tamer emerging in Yi City. Yukai speculates that it might be a hidden master. Zion begins commanding his 100,000 giant iron wolves. He orders them to attack all the trucks and leave no one alive. The wolves charge toward the trucks, and the soldier reports that the tamer must have failed because the beasts are ambushing them again. Lin Yukai shouts for them to suppress the beasts with firepower immediately. His soldiers lean out the windows, shooting at the wolves. The wolves shatter the windows, biting the soldiers and ram the trucks to immobilize them. The soldier then releases his dark energy, stating that it is dangerous there. Lin Yukai yells at him to hurry and teleport to safety. However, one of the wolves hurls the truck away. The soldier shields himself with his dark energy, creating a barrier around him and his master. Enraged, the wolves charge, biting at the barrier, but the soldier activates an ability, declaring that he will show them what it means to be a level 5 Esper. He uses his nano cage to teleport, unleashing immense darkness toward the wolves. Lin Yukai places a hand on the soldier's back and urges him to hurry, as the wolves are coming again. The soldier then states that his nano cage has limitations and that they cannot escape like this, attempting to teleport them to the walls of the ancient city. His energy spreads across the entire area, but then a presence appears behind them, saying that he has been waiting for them since they endured more than expected. The soldier turns around and asks who he is, but they quickly realize that the man is non-Zion. Lin Yukai asks if he is the beast tamer and if he is trying to take his life. However, Zion confirms that he is absolutely right. In desperation, the officer shouts that if Zion touches him, he will ensure his family meets a terrible end. But before he can do anything, the young man grabs him by the neck and tells him that he believes him. However, he will act before he gets the chance. Lin Yukai tries to call for Fang Meng. Fang Meng tells his master not to worry, as he will teleport him now, releasing his nano energy. But Zion activates the Azura Dragon Slayer aura, condensing energy into a dragon's murderous intent. This repels Fang Meng's nano energy, and it breaks the soldier's hand, who screams that he can no longer teleport and realizes that Zion is also a high-level Esper. He groans, hoping that wasn't the case as his hand is twisted, but Zion finishes him off with a punch. Lin Yukai begs for mercy when he sees his subordinate's body on the ground. However, Zion apologizes and throws him off the cliff. As his final words, the officer screams that Zion is a deserter and cannot do this. He is attacked by the wolves in his last moments, and thus he meets his end, devoured. Zion covers his face with a mask and bids farewell to Lin Yukai. At the same time, in the Esper Research Agency, a girl is taking a bath and says she felt a powerful Esper aura coming from Yi City. It felt the same as a few days ago when a Supreme Esper emerged, which she could sense due to her perception ability. This girl was Su Leng. She stands up and says she will report this to the agency immediately. Zion gathers with the wolves and says that now that everything is taken care of, they can return to their place. But the wolves are extremely affectionate with him, licking their master, who tells them to stop. The wolves persist, but the young man orders them to sit and behave. Zion takes a deep breath and says that there is nothing he can do about them. Still, he pats one wolf's head, telling it that it did well this time. That was the wolf's reward, a pat on the head. He then commands them to return and not run one by one. The wolves line up in an orderly manner while Zion jumps onto a tank, saying he has a new task for them. They must go to the northern desert and hunt for some source stones for him. Under the full moon, the wolves howl toward their leader. At the same time, at the slaughterhouse in Yi City, Zhang Yuan reports that Lin Yukai's team was found near a northern beast nest and that the entire group met its end. She questions what Zhang was up to. The young man simply replies that he asked Lin Yukai for some mutant wolves. The girl asks if he can control beasts too, but Zhang tells her to stay quiet since some secrets cannot be revealed. She quickly understands what he means and changes the subject, saying they found evidence against Lin Yukai that morning and that everything will be handled soon. The young man gets up and says that's good. Yuan mentions she has free time and asks if Zhang wants to have a drink that night, but he refuses, saying that during a national crisis, he isn't in the mood. The young man stops walking and turns, saying that if she truly wants to show gratitude, there is another way. The girl becomes flustered and asks what that way is. Zhang states that he wants to turn Yi City into the greatest slaughterhouse, as recently there have been 10 to 100 times more mutant animals than in other places. The girl tells him to leave that to her. The next day at Slaughterhouse 4, Zhang is training with his Azura talent. He says turning it into a slaughterhouse was a brilliant idea since it is now much easier to obtain origin stones from mutant animals. At the same time, he looks at his hand and says that with the giant iron wolves he has captured, he will soon organize 1 million beasts. 2 days later, he had reached a total of 1.9 million resource stones for taming beasts. He strikes the ground, declaring that the fate of the world will rest on his shoulders, for he, Nan Zhang, calls upon all to hold the north and defend the Blue Star. The young man had reached level 8 as a beast tamer, with 500,000 level 5 wolves under his command and the ability to tame creatures up to level 7. He summons all his beasts. On the Whitebone Plains, the young man stands before more beasts. He extends his hand and identifies them as flaming iron yaks at level 6. Releasing his energy, he begins to tame them. The yaks stomp on the ground, but they are soon overwhelmed by Nan Zhang's energy, and he commands them to secure the Whitebone Plains and gather source stones. He also instructs them not to attack human cities or humans, only to await further orders from him. The yaks agree and follow him. Now Zhang commands 500,000 giant iron wolves and 500,000 flaming iron yaks. At the Rift Canyon, the young man states that with the 1 million source stones he has left, he will tame a group of rampaging level 7 mutant monkeys. He looks up at the sky with his sword and says that, as expected of level 7 beasts, their aura is on another level compared to the wolves and yaks. It dominates the entire sky. A monkey leaps toward the young man. Zhang admires the creature's speed and ferocity. Then he extends his sword to tame the beast quickly before it collides with him, striking his hand against the face of the rampaging monkey. Zhang says that luckily they were still within his taming level. The beasts charge at him rapidly in a massive herd. The young man turns, asking what that sound was. He sees that the monkey has broken free from his control. He is surprised as he glances to the side. The monkey attempts to bite him, and Zhang wonders if he failed to tame them. Thus he releases his Azura form, stating that he should simply defeat them into submission before taming. Using the Azura Berserker mode, he lands a powerful kick on the rampaging monkey, causing a massive shockwave of destruction in the impacted area. He activates the level 8 Beast Tamer ability, known as Full Power, to tame the monkey, making the entire Rift Canyon tremble. Yet the monkeys remain unaffected, and Zhang hears the noise again, realizing that it must have been the reason he failed last time. Dodging the beasts, he says that sending them to the afterlife would be a waste of energy, as he needs to defeat the leader behind them. Zhang leaps as high as possible, grabbing onto a vine hanging from the canyon. Holding on alongside 2 other monkeys, he remarks that they have impressive combat power, making them crash into each other while noting that they have too little intelligence to form strategies. One monkey chases after him, biting the vine to snap it and make Zhang fall. The young man grabs another section and acknowledges that it was a good move. He swings the monkey into another, commenting that they are disrespecting their new master. Zhang leaps toward another cliff, commanding their leader to come out. A purple aura envelops the area, and Zhang declares that it is time to change leadership here. A hand emerges from within the cave, and the young man notes the sheer size of the creature. Its pressure is immense. If not for his Azura ability, he would have been forced to his knees seconds ago. It is a king monkey of at least level 9, or possibly even higher, which attempts to grab the young man. Its speed is incredible, something Zhang realizes as he narrowly dodges the grasp. The monkey tries to bite him, and the young man wonders if it intends to devour him whole. However, he releases his Azura aura into his sword and declares that he will not be an easy meal, using the Azura Fury blade to strike at the king monkey's hand. However, the monkey avoids the young man's aura, slamming him into the canyon floor and hurling him toward the ground. Landing nearby shortly after, Zion coughs as he lies on the ground while the king monkey approaches. He says he is not weak and must prove who the real boss is, unleashing his earthly hell mode and generating a massive, ominous aura. The young man removes his coat, his expression transforming due to the ability. Meanwhile, at the Super Abilities Agency, a girl asks her older sister if she felt that. It was already past 3 a.m., and she had been waking up in terror every night. At this rate, she wouldn't grow properly. Su Leng responds that this murderous intent is the same as before, and the girl replies that the higher-ups want them to keep an eye on Yi City because of it. The blonde girl tells her to stop calling her older sister, since they are the same age, while the girl says she is just being polite by not calling her aunt. At that moment, the sky turns red, and Su Leng states that something is coming. She must prepare to return from the southern side of Yi City, toward Rift Canyon. Chen Kier begins reciting a poem to activate her Esper perception ability, and then activates. Zion uses earthly hell to charge at the primate, aiming to cut it down with his black sword. He leaps onto the primate's head as he brings it down, his face completely distorted, as if he were truly Azura. Chen Kier collapses to the ground. Su Leng rushes to wake her up and asks what she saw, but Kier cries in shock, saying it was terrifying. It was an Azura demon. Zion points his sword at the monkey and asks if it had fun. The monkey is completely defeated, its mouth drenched in blood. Then the young man tells it that if it didn't have fun, it should stand up and fight again, though he wouldn't promise it would be easy. The monkey attempts to rise, bleeding even more. Zion questions if it truly wants to fight again, saying it would be a shame to lose its life like this, and he asks if it would rather join his ranks, since he will be dealing with the 10,000 races together, shocking the monkey. The giant monkey stares at Zion, who remains silent in his Azura mode. Then it extends its hand toward the young man, stopping in front of him. Zion places his hand on its fist and tells the monkey that it is a good boy. Thus he deactivates his Azura mode in front of them. Then he speaks for everyone to hear, including the million rampaging monkeys. From this day forward, they would obey their king's command and secure Rift Canyon to obtain source stones, without harming humans or attacking cities, and following his orders. Night passes in the canyon. Zion now commands 1 million level 7 rampaging monkeys and holds dominion over Rift Canyon as well. At the same time, at the Super Abilities Agency, Su Leng states that she felt a strong presence, and Kier responds that her ability lasts only 3 seconds every 24 hours. The blonde says she doesn't know what it means, but she has been thinking, what if both energies belong to the same person? Kier wonders if that's possible, as they have been monitoring the Eastern Espers for years, and the top 10 rankings still have some unknown figures who have never appeared publicly. But the Azura from yesterday, he definitely secured at least the 10th spot. Su Leng says she has been thinking too much and should just announce the rankings. Thus, the rankings from 1 to 9 remain to be revealed, with the mysterious Azura man taking the 10th spot, Land Binging at 11th, and Chu Tian with spatial abilities at 12th. The next day, the news is published, exciting people as the rankings are revealed, especially about Azuras being lethal killing machines. At the slaughterhouse, Xiao Liu tells Chief Nan to wipe his face first, as his phone has been buzzing non-stop. Zion agrees with her, picking up a cloth. Then a news report states that countries Mi and Mao, as well as the 8th Defense Line, have fallen. And to protect their homeland, the Eastern Alliance has activated the veteran police call-up for the 5th Defense Line. Zion comments that not only was time running out faster, but they were also calling the veterans earlier than expected, reminding him of his father. His phone buzzes with a notification right after. It was his father inviting him to dinner if he had time, saying that his mother and sister missed him. Zion's father was cooking and apologized to the reporter, saying that since his wife, son, and daughter were coming home, he needed to cook, making her wait. However, she was free to join them. The reporter remarks that he is a kind man, as she only wanted a quick interview about the veteran call-up. Zion clenches his hand but tells his father that he will go with them. He stands up, and his mother asks where he is going so late, but the young man replies that he is heading to the slaughterhouse. His mother questions whether it is so urgent that it cannot wait until after dinner, but Xiangshen says that these are his own responsibilities, and he has already seen enough of the others. Zion stares at the door without saying anything. In the primal submerged forest, Zion runs, saying he still has some time left tonight, so it was time to tame more elephants. He stops in the middle of the forest and calls them out, stating that he already knows where they are. At that moment, a gigantic elephant charges toward him, tearing a tree trunk from the ground with its trunk. Zion simply slashes with his sword, splitting both the trunk and the elephant's trunk in half. He quickly leaps off the ground. Landing on the elephant's head, he states that he has a simple plan, and no time for games. Using his taming talent on the elephant, The elephant's eyes turn red due to the young man's power. He commands the elephant to go and warn the others that anyone who disobeys his orders will be executed immediately. The elephant moves through the forest, rushing toward its group, spreading Zion's message. The young man approaches while emanating his soul and tells the elephants to listen. He extends his hand, declaring that they must guard the primal submerged forest and mine source stones without disobeying his orders. Zion is now able to tame more than 3 million beasts and gains the primal submerged forest as his territory, commanding 1 million war elephants. He says he has finally unlocked the formation tree, which allows him to create amplification, bloodthirst, and key sword formations. Turning his back to the elephants, he states that he needs to level up, so he will head to the slaughterhouse to collect some source stones. At the slaughterhouse, the young man defeats all the beasts. Now possessing 100,000 source stones, with only 10,000 needed for a formation, he declares that it is enough to level up and that he should see what the key sword formation can do. More beasts emerge from the slaughterhouse gate. Zion simply focuses, channeling the power of heaven and earth to summon 1,000 blades, creating a cyan formation that whirls around the slaughterhouse like a tornado. The young man names his formation the Key Sword Formation. As it crashes to the ground, annihilating the remaining beasts in the area, he remarks that, as a level 1 formation, it is still weak. So he prepares to enhance the formation, this time using 2,000 swords. Slashing everything in his path, he states that once the formations are completed, everything will practically take care of itself. At the second slaughterhouse, the young man activates the Bloodthirst formation alongside the Key Sword formation. An hour later, he has already upgraded his talent to level 2 and unlocked the Elemental Sword, Flaming Fire, and Decimal Amplification formations. However, each formation requires 20 source stones and can be accumulated infinitely. Zion admires the sunrise from atop a building, quickly realizing that morning has already arrived, and that it is a good time to say goodbye to everyone in advance to the front lines. Xiao Liu approaches Wang and greets her good morning, but she soon notices the open door and asks if Chief Nan has been working. Lei responds that he arrived after dinner. Wang complains that all of this is because of the reporters trying to shame him, and the girls ask about it. Then, the older woman pulls out her phone and asks if they haven't seen the news, as she spent the whole night fighting against malicious comments. On the post about Zhang's father accepting the call-up, she defended Zhang multiple times without caring about the opposition. Xiao Liu and Li complain that the comments went way too far this time. But Zhang arrives, capturing everyone's attention, saying that since they were all together, just this once, he needed to deliver something in front of everyone. Xiao Liu asks about it and wonders if Chief Nan is heading to the front lines. An old man approaches Zhang and says that his father asked him to deliver a letter. The young man takes it in his hand and immediately begins reading. The letter tells his son that Xiangshan and Zishan will soon head to the battlefield and that he knows none of this is his son's fault. Xiangshan does not know exactly what his son is planning, but he knows it will be something great, and that he has never backed down from a challenge. He tells Zhang that he cannot fool him because he already knows that the mysterious Azura ranked in the top 10 is him. And all this time he has endured strongly, so he must not let anyone break his resolve. Additionally, he must protect his mother, who is still in the city. At the end of the letter, it is written that everything was done with love and respect from his father. Zhang is left speechless. Xiao Liu tries to tell him not to stress about it, while Li points out that he is already carrying too much weight for others, because without him, they would all fall apart, as they need the supplies he provides. Wang says that as long as she is there, no one will slander him because she will shut them all up with ease. Zhang thanks everyone but says there is something he needs to tell them all. He asks if they know about the announcement regarding the reserve force for the 5th defense line. Xiao Liu, somewhat hesitant, admits that she wanted to be the chief engineer there. Then Zhang reassures them, saying they shouldn't worry because he won't delay the beast hunting operations. In front of a divine statue, several trucks depart. Zhang stands in the middle of the crowd, thinking that he will take his father's words to heart, because he was right. Going to the battlefield now wouldn't be better than defeating some monsters, but it didn't change the fact that he was disappointing them by leaving his mother alone. But the Xenos were not a carbon-based life form and didn't need to mine source stones, so there were no better choices for him. They would only grow stronger through powerful enemies, and with his current power, humanity stood no chance, because in the end, he had protected no one. If he wants to win, he must focus on the 5th defense line, as that will be where humanity holds its ground. His father need not worry, he will never abandon his promise. 3 days later, an elder informs Chief Nan that he is truly a high-level graduate from the architecture department. This was Engineer Lei, who explains that according to Zhang's design, the reserve force for the 5th defense will cover 20 cities, something not even tanks could accomplish. The young man says it's all thanks to the construction team and Engineer Lei, though unfortunately, The electric iron wall was nothing more than a smokescreen, because true defense lies in the formations, and formations require a vast amount of source stones, so Xiang heads to a frozen area where he still has 3,500,000 remaining, enough for multiple formations. The area between the 5th defense and Yi City is uninhabited, the perfect place for his formations. So the young man begins reciting a formation. It is the Flaming Fire formation, covering an entire kilometer with 50,000 formations. Now he begins reciting another incantation from atop a tree, using 50,000 elemental key sword formations of the same size as the previous one, stacking them with the fire formations per kilometer. Xiang continues stacking all his formations, maintaining 50,000 as the standard per kilometer, until he reaches level 3 in formations, unlocking 3 new ones, now needing 5 million formations to level up again. He descends from the tree and notes that he has layered formations across 10 kilometers, accumulating level 2 formations. This will root out low-leveled Xenos, but he doesn't have enough source stones to spend on a level 3 formation and delay his own level ups, so he must conserve them. For today, he has completed the first layer of the defense line, covering 35 kilometers from Yi City, with 1.25 million accumulated level 2 formations. The next day, at the construction site, Engineer Lai informs Xiang of a problem. He pulls out his phone and tells him to check the news. People are commenting that Xiang is wasting time and money. The old man explains that the public is against it. However, the young man tells Engineer Lee not to worry and to continue the construction as planned, because he has a new improvement plan. Reflecting that the defense line was never truly a defense, it was all to give the Xenos a false sense of security and lower their guard upon reaching the formation zone. Engineer Lee asks why a defense line wouldn't be a more practical choice, but Xiang quickly activates his ability, finding the answer, and snatches the clipboard from Lee's hand, thinking that since his elemental command rune has yet to be unlocked, he cannot create anything underground, so he must prepare for when he obtains it. He tells Engineer Lai that they need to build 2 trenches, one in front and one behind the wall, which the old man questions. Xiang explains that the Xenos will attack everything they see ahead, so they will electrify the wall and turn it into water to create a high-voltage trap. Engineer Lai is impressed and says he will report this to the city's news immediately, running off, stating that everyone is eager to hear about it as well, while Xiang considers that once he unlocks the elemental command rune, the defense will become even stronger. At Rift Canyon, through the slaughterhouse and beast stone harvesting, Xiang has reached level 4. With Wan, Chu, and Gan cities included, he now has 45 miles fortified with 375,000 accumulated level 2 formations. And the next upgrade will take some time, even though Xiang has reached level 4 and unlocked several new formations. However, he senses a familiar aura and wonders if it is a powerful Xeno. But he also detects a human aura. Leaping toward the location, he mutters that this is not good, because the Xenos are trying to take the life of someone under his concern. Deep in the mountains at the hidden Chu clan, a man approaches a gravestone, but suddenly, an explosion erupts from the ground. The old patriarch of the Chu clan, Chu Changshan, asks why Xing left seclusion 2 years early when he was supposed to remain for 12 years after the invasion. Xing tells his master that he felt a powerful aura emanating from the northern frontier, resonating with him, which is why he left seclusion. The master says that the region is full of spiritual energy, but the young man insists that this is precisely why it is important, and he has decided to visit the northern frontier personally. Changshan warns that there are rumors of Xeno escorts searching for prodigies, making it dangerous. But the young man leaps forward, declaring that in an apocalyptic era, everything is dangerous. Thus, he activates his flight domain, stating that if he can receive even a little help from an expert, his journey will be much more valuable. An hour later, he observes multiple fortified borders and finds them incredible, wondering if they could be the work of a single person, because this was the mark of a true hidden master. However, he senses a presence, a Xeno flying toward him under the moonlight. It is the Iron Executioner Xeno, Unit 3578, which Xeno dodges. He evades by leaping away from the Xeno, but looking back, he sees another Xeno, one exuding an elite aura, and he had barely left seclusion, yet they were already after him. The other Xeno is Unit 1324, which states that a level 10 Esper prodigy has been detected and must be exterminated. Thus, the flying Xeno attempts to strike the young man, but Xeno quickly activates his control domain, forming a hand seal, manifesting a sword domain above the 2 Xenos, and creating an infernal fire and azure spirit formation, declaring that the Xenos will now face his wrath. Xiang leaps toward the battlefield, stating that times have changed and fearing that prodigies might not have a chance, especially since his father is stationed at the 7th defense line. In his previous timeline, prodigies only emerged in the 12th year of the invasion, giving humanity hope and pushing the Xenos back until the 20th year. He knew the Xenos had sent their top assassins to Earth to await the prodigies, but this world needed his plans, and he wouldn't let them fail prematurely. The flying Xeno defends against Xing's formation with its wings, while the giant one endures the strike head-on. Xing coughs up blood, admitting that handling 2 elite Xenos is too much for him. The flying Xeno effortlessly evades the strike, while the giant one shatters the sword with its hand, causing an explosion between the 3 combatants. Xing raises his hands in defense and spits blood, questioning how he could meet his end here when he had barely set foot into the world. But he refuses to accept it, holding on to the last moment, stating that if he must lose his life, he will take one of them down with him. As the 2 Xenos attempt to attack, Xing is saved while Xiang tells him to stay alert. A dust explosion covers the battlefield. Xiang places him against a tree. Xing recognizes that this was the senior presence he had sensed earlier, while the young man simply asks if he can still fight. The prodigy rises, stating that with the senior's help he can. Xiang then orders him to focus on the Iron Executioner with long-range support while he restrains the Colossus. Xing backs off, confirming that he understands as the flying Xeno approaches, detecting Xiang as an Esper of unknown level. The young man thinks that it has been a while since he last saw an Iron Executioner, but now is merely a way for him to test his formations. Touching the ground, he activates a level 3 formation, summoning distorted earth spikes. But it proves ineffective, leading Xiang to remark that a level 3 formation is nothing against his enemy. Immediately, he touches the ground again, accumulating 50,000 formations of spikes and cold bite, creating countless ice spikes in the area, which shatter the executioner. From afar, they take the shape of a frozen mountain. Xing remarks that these formations are far stronger than any he has seen before, and not only that, his combat style is nothing like those of the ancient clans, making him wonder who Xiang really is. The battlefield becomes engulfed in ice as the executioner is frozen, and the prodigy witnesses the feat firsthand. The Colossus continues its attack, while Xiang orders him to stay alert and not lower his guard. Thus, the giant strikes Xing with its immense tentacles, causing a massive impact on the ground in front of Xiang, forcing him to enter Azura mode, landing a punch on the Colossus's face. Xing watches Xiang land in Azura form and wonders if he was the top 10 ranked warrior. The young man in Azura mode thinks that a real battle is a great opportunity, and instead of ending it quickly, he will use it to improve the prodigy's experience. He recalls the area amplification formation and wonders if it can be applied to a person. Then, Xing apologizes for forcing him to retreat, but Xiang touches his forehead and orders him not to move while the boy questions what this is, until he starts trembling due to the tenfold amplification inflicted on his body. Xing writhes in pain on the ground, and the young man orders him to endure. The system warns that the human body cannot withstand more than this, and Xiang says that this much is enough for him to defend himself. Thus, the Colossus prepares to attack again, while he deduces that the prodigy seeks training, but in his current state, it is too risky. But he has no choice, until a purple flash forms in the sky, and Xiang wonders what it is, noticing that it is Xing forming a domain with his power, manifesting a sword or a barrier. However, the executioner breaks free from the ice. Xiang stands before him as the Xeno tries to attack, but he charges toward the creature, creating a level 4 thunder barrage formation, generating a colossal overload in the affected area due to a 50,000-fold accumulation. Both monsters are executed by the strikes delivered by their opponents. Xing lands beside Xiang, who exclaims that this is true combat power. The prodigy kneels beside the young man and thanks him for saving his life and opening his eyes, while the senior simply asks him to stand. Thus, the boy says that a mysterious Azura Esper, who secretly created formations and acted behind a mask, was planning something big, but he was not ready yet, for everyone knew that the world's greatest would resist the Xenos, and he asks if he intends to use this place as a battlefield. Xiang thinks he is a genius. Xing continues judging by his senior's expression and asks if his surname starts with N. Xiang is surprised, and the boy says it wasn't hard to guess since the Azura class was all about carnage in a slaughterhouse. For the formations on the 5th defense line, where he had volunteered a few days ago, were meant to avoid detection. Xing explains that everything he just said was based on intuition and questioning, so he should be forgiven if he was wrong, while Xiang wonders how he knows so much. Then, the young man continues, admitting with some embarrassment that he had been in seclusion for only 10 years, but he watched TV and browsed the internet. He thumps his chest and asks for permission to lead the Chu clan to the 7th defense line, as it is his duty, and he also wants to buy time for his senior's plan. Xiang thinks that there are truly intelligent people who can be trusted, and he thanks him, saying he needs time. The borders are dangerous, and he must promise to survive, for he is useful alive. Besides, if he sees some people at the border, he must protect them, to which Xing reassures his senior not to worry, as he will do so. Xiang only thinks of his younger sister and father. Then he asks Xing to take him to his clan, for before heading to the borders, he will bestow him with the amplification formation as a gift. The boy continues, saying that he has a younger sister who cannot speak, but she has great teleportation abilities, and with amplification, she will be invaluable at his side. The day's news is about the Chu clan prodigy emerging and defeating a level 10 Xeno, reaching level 9, while a mysterious formation master reaches rank 8. The city's people discuss the news, as at this rate they would reach the borders before the veterans, and it all seemed like a fantasy novel. At the slaughterhouse in Yi City, Xing introduces his sister, Chu Tian, to leave in the hands of his senior, who realizes he wasn't joking when he said she was younger, and he questions whether he is being made into a babysitter while he goes to war, while the girl sits sucking on a lollipop. Some people comment that the current prodigy is hanging around with the loser Nan Xiang, who, despite his talent, associates with worthless people. Then Chu Tian draws an S in the air with her finger, imbuing the air with his energy and making the people disappear from their surroundings. A civilian shouts that 2 old women have fallen from a sewer, while Xiang recalls the name Chu Tian, who was ranked 12th among espers. He holds the girl's hand and says it is an honor, while thinking that with her, he wouldn't need to travel and could switch between the 5th defense line and the slaughterhouse at will. Thus, he no longer needed extra work to cover his necromancy. Instead, he summons the tree that requires 1,000,000 dead to evolve, his 4th ability. Zhang Yuan shouts, asking how he intends to handle all the slaughterhouses across 20 cities around the 5th defense line, for he would be overwhelmed, and the distance was enormous. But Xiang tells her to relax because he had planned for these details and needed authorization. The girl says it was not a problem since the slaughterhouses were located beneath the cities. The young man turns around thanking her as he has to leave because he has something to do. The girl ponders that his ability seems to have grown significantly again and that he no longer appears to fear losing his life. However, he has yet to go to the front lines. Xiang explains to Chu Tian that there is a massive flow of source stones in the slaughterhouses, and they need to improve them to an unprecedented level. Thus, the little girl uses her ability to teleport them north, where they encounter the wolves. The young man reflects that he must start summoning, as he has some source stones to burn, and so he asks to be taken to Emperor Qin's mausoleum, 1,000 kilometers away. The girl focuses once more and makes them disappear from the location, startling the wolves. They appear above a cliff, and Xiang wonders if the girl made a mistake in teleporting. But he realizes that this was the limit of her teleportation range, and even with a simple amplification, the distance covered was only 100 kilometers. Then, toward Emperor Qin's mausoleum, Xiang orders Chu Tian to find a safe place. But the girl had already vanished, prompting him to remark that she was smarter than her brother. Without interruptions, Xiang activates his 4th necromancy tree, releasing his reddish energy while shouting for the spirit of the great Qin dynasty to awaken. A greenish energy spreads throughout the necromancy zone, surprising Xiang with what stood before him, for the prodigious Qin appears and asks who dares disturb his slumber. Xiang draws his sword and declares that even after 1,000 years, his presence exudes the aura of a true emperor, attempting to reason with the king. He requests that his majesty allow him to use his army to help the world in peril, but Qin calls him an insolent child, drawing his sword while asking if the boy really believed his soldiers were under his command. The emperor swings his sword, meaning that if the boy wanted the army, he would have to prove himself worthy. Xiang dodges the slash and apologizes for his intrusion, activating Azura mode. Qin charges forward again, stating that he unified the 6 kingdoms, so cheap tricks would not impress him, for he must have the audacity to covet the dragon throne. Thus both powers collide. Xiang tells him not to judge a book by its cover, and to prove it in a real fight, while the emperor calls him arrogant. The young man uses Azura's dragon slayer to strike at the emperor, but Qin evades the attack and questions how bold he must be to call himself a dragon slayer, declaring that he will show him the real thing as he invokes the supreme emperor's will. A dragon forms in the emperor's attack, aiming to strike Xiang. The boy attempts to use his Azura ability again, harnessing the power of the beasts he had tamed, but he cannot even wound the dragon, forcing him to enter maximum Azura form, acknowledging that this was to be expected from an emperor-level spirit. A skeletal form materializes around Xiang as he unleashes hell on earth, clashing directly with the dragon. Qin scoffs that it is nothing more than mere theatrics, but Xiang wants to know if that is really the case. For the dragon gradually begins to be consumed by Azura's reddish energy. The emperor demands to know how this is possible, but Xiang closes in to strike him while apologizing to his majesty. Thus he cleaves Emperor Ying Zheng in half. Qin concedes that it is enough, warning that if he landed another hit, he would reduce the entire mausoleum to rubble. Zhang sheathes his sword, and the emperor acknowledges the boy's victory, but he had been dormant for many years. So before the boy could lead his army, he had to tell the emperor his full story. Qin states that he cannot abandon his descendants and hands Zhang a tiger statue, explaining that it will facilitate the summoning of his warriors, and the boy expresses his gratitude. Thus he calls upon the warriors of Qin to heed his command, for the enemies had already reached the barriers, and he had to protect his homeland. Necromancy rises to level 3 with the 10 million soldiers of Qin, who possessed the skills of loyalty and destruction. Zhang had finally unlocked the skill tree of forbidden elemental spells, which granted him several abilities that consumed 10,000 source stones and could be accumulated infinitely. But a distant noise is heard, and the young man realizes it is not good, as the Sino assassins had noticed his presence and were attacking from 2 directions. Qin summons his soldiers, Wang Jian and Meng Jian, who appear, and the emperor orders them to deal with the invaders. Zhang informs his majesty to lead the east while he handles those present there, using Chu Tian's teleportation. 20 kilometers from the mausoleum, a young man fights multiple assassins, stating that he was merely investigating the energy he had sensed. That was Su Chang, the prodigy of the Su clan, who remarks that it was a bad time for a battle. He uses the collision of 100 ghosts to control the monsters with a thick thread, commanding them to forfeit their lives. The Xenos are affected by the ability, but the young man dashes away, saying that it was not enough and that they should get involved as well, tying the monster's arm. Su Chang hides behind the monster and tells the Xenos not to worry, as that was his partner, and they would not be harmed. The Xeno mercilessly attacks his own ally, cursing them for not hesitating even against their comrades. Chang's puppet retaliates while the boy encourages it, telling it to fight for him. Thus, an equal struggle of abilities ensues between the 2 Xenos. Chang glances back, spotting a stealth attack from a Xeno, and ducks to prevent the strike from reaching him easily. The assassin Xeno tries to attack him from above, severing Chang's puppet with a single blow. Its blade nears the boy, and he declares that he will take everything from it, as the Xeno would not leave alive either. But the sword is intercepted by another thin blade. Su Chang wonders what it is while noticing the greenish aura. Qin introduces himself and tells the boy not to be afraid, as he came to assist, surprising Chang with the presence of the first emperor of China. The emperor slashes with his sword, stating that he has no time to waste, and the young man thanks his majesty. Yin Zhang advances against the Xenos, questioning how they dare harm his descendants, and orders his soldiers to show no mercy. The Jian twins agree with their king, attacking the remaining Xenos on the battlefield. At the same time, a noise is heard from afar. 20 kilometers west of the Emperor's mausoleum, 2 siblings from the Qin clan shield themselves from the Xeno attacks, Qin Sui and Qin Yang. Yang urges Sui to listen to him and just run, touching the ground and activating his plant invocation to wound the monsters, creating a wooden behemoth to restrain them. He shouts that there is now a chance for his sister to escape, but Xeno executioners slice through the wood. Yang attempts to restrain them with vines, but blood splatters on his face, for the executioner had wounded Sui, who stepped into the strike's path. With tears in his eyes, the young man screams, demanding how the executioner dares lay a hand on his sister, unleashing a strike that hurls the executioner far away. Sui warns her brother that 2 colossi are behind them and that he should be cautious. As the colossi strike is about to land, it is pierced by a crimson sword. Zhang commands Chu Tian to teleport all those Xenos 1 kilometer south, then instructs the 2 siblings not to move or speak during the teleportation. Raising his hand toward them, he declares that he will amplify them quickly. Ying and Sui scream in pain as the formation strikes their minds, but Zhang reassures them that once the amplification is complete, they will be able to handle half of them, while the other half will serve as a test for his forbidden spells. He casts a thunder spell, launching an attack skyward while extending his hand, striking a cloud and amplifying the overload 100-fold. Then he unleashes it upon the beasts, reaching level 2 as a spellcaster summoner and doubling his target. Ying tells their benefactor that he will handle only half, and Sui asks to leave the rest to them. Zhang apologizes for overdoing it as he puts on his mask, thinking that he did not expect the spells to be so powerful. The prodigy of the Sui clan calls for attention as there are still Xenos remaining. Then both he and his sister attack the Xenos with their plant manipulation spells. Sui manages to pierce the Colossus with her vines, and Ying does the same with the executioner. Zhang states that he has seen enough combat power and that the last coward is his to deal with. He then clenches his hand while casting the Forbidden Earth Element spell, which creates a gigantic earthen arm overloaded 50-fold. He commands his strike to bury his opponent, creating a massive dust impact at the battlefield, leaving only him standing amidst the battle. Chu Tian thinks that he is using a firearm to shoot a mosquito by wielding such power, Even the siblings are astonished by Zion's display of strength, saying that the heavens overheated and the earth trembled. Zion turns and asks what they will do, to which Sui and Yin kneel, expressing their deepest gratitude to their savior for his help. The young man wonders if all the ancient clans kneeled like this, but the twins declare that their lives belong to their benefactor, and any order will be obeyed, making Zion question if they knew his identity. Ying and Sui deny it, saying they should have asked for his name first. However, the young man tells them it is fine not to know, thinking that most geniuses are not as intelligent as Sing, and that his amplification does not improve a person's K. Qin appears and tells Chang that he is his friend, regardless of the age difference. The heir of the Su clan asks if the masked young man is the one Qin spoke of, and Qin Shi Huang confirms. Chang thanks him for saving him and says that he would usually kneel, but since he dislikes doing so, he will owe him a favor instead. Zhang states that he has two requests, one being that they allow him to visit their clans and prepare an amplification boost. So questions what amplification is and why it sounds frightening. But the senior simply touches his forehead, placing the formation on the genius. He begins screaming in pain due to the arrangement. Ying asks what his benefactor desires, as he will do anything, and Zhang wonders if he should send them to the front lines. Since he is currently strategizing from behind, sending them to fight would be a moral contradiction. He asks them to take care of their own, and Chang remarks that the masked man is terrifying and wonders if it is hard to tell what he is thinking. After all, he summoned the army to protect his homeland but does not share his plans with them, questioning if Zion intends to act like a lone wolf in the shadows. Sui asks how dare he speak that way to their benefactor, but Zion admits that he is right. He needs them to gather their clans and head to the 7th defense to buy him time, and those who survive can find him at the 5th defense line. And when that happens, he will reveal his true face, surprising the prodigies who accept the proposal. Zion hands the tiger statue to Chang, saying that he is entrusting him with Qin's 10 million soldiers. Then the young man bows to the geniuses and says he is leaving everything in their hands. Meanwhile, Qin reflects that the blood of an emperor flows within him, and that the spirits will never fade. News reports state that prodigies from the Su and Qin clans are leading at the 7th defense, while those from the Lin, Zhuge, and Shou clans have been defeated by the Xenos. Xiao Liu wonders what is happening, as it seems like they are being picked off one by one, and Wang laments the future of the children who were supposed to be the strongest. Zion reflects that prodigies are emerging earlier than in his previous life, and this is not sustainable, for even if he rushes to save them, he cannot guarantee their survival. He then turns and walks away, saying that it is like trying to fill the ocean with a bucket. But he needs to strike at the root of the problem, or nothing will change, so he asks Shu Tian to lead him to the northern desert to awaken the 4 great prodigies. The portal opens, and Zion tells her to watch how he will capture them one by one. Shu Tian takes the young man to the tomb of Emperor Han, where he calls for the ancient emperor to awaken, summoning various historical figures and declaring that anyone who offends the state of Han will face his wrath. Using necromancy, he summons 20 million soldiers from the Han dynasty to heed his commands and march north. A reddish light emanates from the tomb, and the young man declares that it is time for the 5 great prodigies to make their entrance. Thus he activates Azura, using his maximum level and internal mode to draw attention. At the Super Abilities Agency, Kier screams that it is the mysterious Azura, and his aura is far stronger than before, transforming into a complete berserker, so they must report this immediately. Zion commands the creation of front and rear ranks, protecting the flanks. He recites a poem to establish his formation and seal that land, summoning the Sword Key formation, Inferno, Twisted Earth Thorn, and Accumulated Ice Bite, amplified 1,000,000 times over 100 miles of formation. Su Leng tells her friend to wait, sensing another energy emerging from a magical formation in the same location. While Kier asks if it is the Master of Formations, Zion continues summoning the spirits of the Great Han through his necromancy, commanding them to destroy the invaders for the glory of the Han state, calling forth Wei King, Hu Kubing, and Emperor Wu, who shouts for his army to attack. Su Leng is so shocked that she almost falls to the ground, and Kier asks what happened, for she has never felt such a powerful aura from an undead, and it is undoubtedly a spirit. Meanwhile, Su Leng remarks that besides the 2 top 10, there is also a necromancer, and this energy signature is beyond anything she has ever seen, surpassing level 10. Thus, if it were to be classified, they could only call it a divine level. The mention of the divine level astonishes Kier, who asks if there are 3 divine level espers in the north at this moment. If so, they must report this immediately. Zion casts his Forbidden Light spell, amplified 100-fold, creating an immense radiance that seems to turn night into day. People remark that it is only 10 at night, and wonder if it is a supernatural phenomenon. News reports state that there are now 4 divine level prodigies in the north, commenting that this is the pinnacle, as even the inland military has become involved. The inland's first defense line advances with helicopters toward the northern desert, but even at maximum speed, they will take an hour to arrive. Zion continues summoning all his beasts, from 500,000 iron wolves and flaming iron yaks to millions of monkeys and elephants. The animals appear, following the command of their tamer, roaring to the sky in his honor. The news alerts that a beast tamer is involved, making him the 5th divine-level figure. At a pharmaceutical factory, Chen Liani comments to Xenonen about the wolves they saw in the northern desert, and Xenonen wonders if it is the same master from before. At the resource center, Zhang Yuan notices the Azura powers and beast-taming abilities and wonders if Nan Ziying is the cause of all this turmoil. The light reaches the Eastern Ocean in the state of the Lan clan, where the prodigy of the Lan clan, Chang Kong, riding atop a beast, states that he will meet this beast tamer. In inland, within the Zhuge clan state, Zhu Jiwan flies on a floating rock, saying that this forbidden elemental magic is a golden opportunity for his clan. Thus, prodigies from all ancient clans advance toward the northern desert, from the Xwenyuan, Huan, Yu, and Xu clans. Ziying remarks that such commotion is something the invaders must have already noticed, and it will attract many ambitious prodigies, making it the perfect opportunity to amplify them. His expression darkens as he states that everything is in place, yet he looks forward attentively and says that now only the Xeno assassins remain. In inland, the prodigy of the Huang clan, Huang Xian, is being attacked by Xenos and wonders if he will lose his life there. He then shouts for them to come at him, declaring that he is not afraid. However, the Xenos suddenly stop attacking, leaving the area and abandoning the prodigy, who wonders what is happening. Thus, all the Xenos, from flying ones to colossi and reptiles, advance toward the northern desert, forming an army against Ziying. The young man remarks that they have finally arrived and summons his tamed beast. Then he calls forth his ghost army, announcing that the slaughter is about to begin. He activates his boreal slaughter ability and swiftly cuts down a colossus with his sword. He soon finds himself surrounded by executioner Xenos, but Ziying unleashes his Hell on Earth ability to swiftly eliminate them. The young man turns back, watching as his wolves tear into the Xenos. The yaks use their heads to defeat them, and the Monkey King strikes them down. Even the spirit of Emperor Wu is battling the Xenos, splitting them in half with his blows. Ziying begins floating with a spell and says that, as expected, the beasts and spirits are even more formidable with his amplification spell. Yet even with all his resources, they are still being overwhelmed by the adaptive Xenos, and the same applies to the spirits, who are being sliced in half by the adaptive Xenos. Thus, if the battle continues, he will suffer unnecessary losses. Ziying calls upon the beasts and spirits and states that he will ignite a fire in the center, and they must encircle the enemies, forming a perimeter and pushing from all sides. The beasts should focus on the metal executioners and the trolls, while the spirits should engage the venomous monkeys and the paralyzing behemoth. Amidst several colossi, Ziying states that this location belongs to the Xenos and begins layering the formation. Striking the ground with his aura-infused palm, he creates an explosion that pushes all the Xenos away. The blast annihilates everything in its path on the battlefield. Ziying then informs Chu Tian that he will need her help in the next phase, because if any Xenos break through the formation and reach the city walls, she should teleport him there. However, he notices Chu Tian's teleportation aura swirling around him, and the girl smiles at her friend, sending him directly in front of a giant Xeno. Ziying is surprised, and that Xeno has the same reaction. He strikes the monster and uses his Forbidden Wind Element spell, amplifying its power 50-fold and launching it far away. The Xeno crashes to the ground, surrounded by Ziying's beasts. The beasts then bite and finish off the monster. Chu Tian laughs, saying the troll has fallen, and the young man congratulates her on a job well done, but suggests that next time she aim even higher. Once again, spatial energy envelops him, sending him into the midst of several trolls. Ziying complains that maybe he will get used to it over time. He charges at the trolls, using his Forbidden Lightning spell, amplified 50-fold, to defeat them. He then remarks that the prodigies are already approaching along with the military, so he must finish this now. Stamping his foot on the ground, he invokes his Forbidden Crescent Earth Hunter spell, overloading it 50-fold and commanding the enemies to be drawn in, making the earth shift as if struck by an earthquake. Spectators watch the battle from afar, wondering who could be responsible for such a feat. Zhu Jiwan wants to know who possesses such extraordinary control over the earth, but he is stunned as he looks down, for a small reddish explosion is forming. Thus, Ziying casts amplification on each prodigy observing the battle from a distance, enhancing them tenfold, causing the prodigies to writhe in pain due to the mental strain. The amplification ends, and the prodigy of the Zhuge clan asks for Ziying's name, saying he will be eternally grateful. In his Azura form, the young man replies that he left a message for him and the military in the northern Gobi Desert, and if he wishes to repay the favor, He only needs to obey. Then he vanishes, and Zhu Juan reflects that he disappeared after giving such a gift and still did not reveal his identity. Creating a stone with his ability, he declares that he will honor the request and head to the northern desert to see the message. Finally, the military begins surrounding the battlefield with helicopters. Commander Xu Chiang arrives and asks if this is the right location, searching for the prodigy, while his soldier confirms but admits he also does not understand the situation. However, the ground starts trembling, lifting stones into the air and startling Xu Chiang and his soldier. Xu Jiwan descends to meet the commander, stating that he knows the reason. This is the formation the prodigy buried them in. Xu Chiang asks where the mystical prodigies are, but the young man explains that he merely created the formation and was wearing a mask. The Zhuge family prodigy explains that he disappeared after enhancing their abilities, and the other prodigies affirm the same experience. Lan Changkong presents a stone structure, stating that this is the message left by the prodigies. Everyone turns to see what it says. The commander orders a photograph to be taken and calls for all high-ranking military officials and elder clan leaders to an emergency meeting. From afar, Xiang reflects that it is still not time to reveal himself. It is the only way to secure military aid, and he has already eliminated most of the aliens. However, if they discovered that the 5 prodigies were the same person, the world would descend into chaos. After all, human nature is difficult to predict, and in times of war, anyone can become an enemy. This is what happened in his past life and accelerated the war. He instructs Chu Tian to return to the slaughterhouse. As spatial energy begins to swirl around them, the young man continues thinking that everyone considers him a coward, so it will be difficult for them to realize that he is actually a genius. A new alert reports that the prodigies of the Zhuge and Xuanyuan clans are leading their clans to the 7th defense line, while Changkong has withdrawn his troops. In the military conference hall of the 5th defense line, Xu Chuyang comments that this is the message from the divine-level prodigies who ordered them to proceed to the 7th defense. He then asks what the military's thoughts are on the matter, as they have gathered to discuss this issue. The leader of the Xuanyuan clan, Ru Long, offers to interpret it as a grand strategy, claiming that making the 5th line of defense the last attack was part of the plan. This is because the source of the volcano referred to the artificial volcano that burned everything in its path. The water from the heavens referred to the man-made canal designed to connect the sea with the northeast. The iron forest meant creating an impenetrable jungle of metal, forming colossal metallic trees. And finally, the stones burned by the sky referred to the source stones, which were to be stockpiled. General Fang Lin of the 2nd line of defense states that, judging by everything, this message was created by the prodigy Azura, as believing his words would be reckless. Li Fei from the 3rd defense agrees with him, saying he didn't know the 5 geniuses, so betting the nation's survival on an encrypted message was madness. However, a man at the corner of the table interrupts, asking for a moment. Zhuge Changming states that if the message was made by Azura, then the other prodigies were present, and otherwise, the prodigy of formations would have informed the clans. Considering their demands, which involved powerful formations and spells that required everything, Rulong agrees and says that the prodigies did not reveal themselves. Since his brother Zhuge spoke well, and in times like these, they had no choice but to gamble, for he felt this would be the greatest decision ever made in the East. Su Chuyang comments that the 5 prodigies led thousands of level 10 alien assassins in less than an hour, which was improbable. But they were their body and blood, and their fate was one and the same. So his decision was to support the 5 prodigies. News spread through the city about the projects mentioned on the stone engraved by the prodigy, and people wondered what they were doing. Xiang from the 5th defense says that making a decision swap was good for a great nation, and he had made the right bet, because they placed their faith in him, and he would not let them down. Engineer Li approaches and tells Chief Nan that these projects were similar to those they were already working on. However, the members of the 5th line screamed that there was a red vortex in the sky. It was coming from the 7th defense, surprising Xiang. He looks up at the sky, sweating cold from fear, remembering that this event was only supposed to happen 2 years from now, as it was the dimensional portal of the Xenos. He calls out for his father, his sister, and Xing. Xiang teleports along with Chu Tian and says that with the portal open, he should go to the 7th line of defense, where a war would take place, and since the borders were already overwhelmed, they should only reinforce them. He touches the ground, summoning 20 million warriors of the Han Dynasty to go to the 7th defense, thus creating the spirits while also calling for his battalion of beasts. An explosion occurs in the area, and the young man asked Chu Tian to teleport him and the beasts to the borders. Chu Tian begins to focus on her teleportation magic, even breaking the lollipop in her mouth, but the little girl spits blood immediately after. Xiang catches her before she falls, shouting her name. He tells her they were 1,000 kilometers from the 7th defense, and she shouldn't force herself if she couldn't handle it. Chu Tian, however, starts laughing, surrounding them both with her spatial aura. Xiang is impressed by her action as the girl stands up and says she could handle it. On the battlefield of the 7th line of defense, a soldier warns that the dimensional portal is opening and that they should alert all units. Commander Wang Zai orders the prodigies to lead, the espers to follow, the infantry to clean up the remnants, and the artillery to provide cover, protecting the line at all costs. Zhang tells his brother Nan that they were filled with bombs and asks if fighting even made sense, while Xiangshan responds that he shouldn't speak like that, because he should look at all the prodigies who were there. In the last crisis, they found the prodigies and an army of spirits, and even with no chance of victory, they needed to find a way. Lo Zhang asks if he thinks old men like them would meet defeat, but Xiangshan says that doesn't scare him because this was an endless war. The prodigies had to be strong, but they had fresh blood, so they got tired, bled, and lost their lives. The commander comments that they were very young and even children who had fallen on the battlefield, while Nan looks down in reflection. He places a hand on Zhang's shoulder and says this was all the more reason to give their all, because they should support them with every shot they fired, and if things went wrong, they should give their lives for the prodigies. The commander quickly agrees with him. Then the Xenos begin to fall from the sky, and the commander of the 7th line orders everyone to engage in combat. Xing floats alongside the Qin army and commands them to paint the battlefield red. The prodigy of the Chu clan begins to create his sword manifestation domain, causing a gigantic explosion that engulfs the battlefield. Swords start emerging from the portals. These were the heart-seeking blades, striking the defenseless monsters. Chang controls some Xenos like puppets and orders them to prepare, for it was time to fight. Qin Shi Huang commands his army, declaring that the great Qin would never be discredited. Ying and Sui use their vine magic to control the battlefield and root the monsters in place. Xing continues creating domains to attack the Xenos. Xiangshan informs him that the beasts were 2 clock hours away, at a distance of 3,375 meters. Thus, the army fires from within the walls, striking the battlefield alongside Xing. The soldiers continue relaying information and holding the line against the new wave of enemies, until a presence emerges in the sky, and the commander of the 7th line states that he has never seen this type of Xeno before. It was a gigantic demonic presence, with chains wrapped around its chest, rushing toward Chang. The prodigy of the Su clan asks what that thing was, as it was taller than the city walls, and the giant Xeno slams its hand onto the ground, causing an area of destruction. The puppet monsters created by Chang are destroyed due to the attack. However, Qin Shi Huang orders Bai Qi to protect his friend, and the soldier agrees. Smoke engulfs the battlefield, and Chang flees, stating that he was fine and that this creature was not normal. The Qin Emperor commands all his soldiers to fight alongside him to defeat that giant Xeno. But the Xeno swings its arms, its chains forcing all the soldiers to retreat. It strikes the ground to prevent the advance of the ghost soldiers, and Qin Shi Huang curses it for noticing them. The emperor shouts that they were the warriors of Qin, and they had faced even stronger enemies on the battlefield. Now alive once again, they should not fear. Thus the ghosts advance toward the monster's head, intending to strike it down. A soldier charges forward, calling for the espers to hold the enemies at the rear, while the commander shouts for the infantry to engage the aliens. The soldiers comply with their commander, descending from the walls to attack the Xenos. Alongside the prodigies, the commander orders them to advance with him, as they would capture the leader of the aliens. Hundreds of millions of soldiers advance toward the giant monster in an attempt to take it down. 200 kilometers from the 7th line of defense, Chu Tian's spatial energy gathers. Xiang asks if the girl can keep going. The girl responds that only 200 kilometers remained, and she could already sense her brother. Su Chang asks His Majesty to take the undead army and hold off the other aliens, leaving the great monster to them. Qin Shi Huang orders his soldiers to follow what his friend said, and they should obey. Thus, the heir of the Su family leaps toward the Xeno leader with his puppets, declaring that this would be the end of that monster. He shoots his strings forward using the palms of his hands. The controlled Xenos encircle the leader, and Chang orders them to try and restrain its head for 30 seconds, calling it scum. Xing flies over the battle, expanding his domain to manifest the sword, unleashing a massive attack toward the Xeno leader. Yin uses the vine prison to trap the aliens, while Sui conjures his one-tree forest to encircle the opponents. The defense line commander charges toward the vines, wielding his sword and summoning his Kylan flames, unleashing a burst of fire that sets the entire battlefield ablaze. He notices that the monster is too strong and cannot be harmed, even with the combined power of 5 espers. The esper leader uses his broken swords in a descending motion, driving them into the battlefield while still surrounded by fire, forcing everyone to retreat due to the power of the blast, but the commander orders them not to lose focus and to keep attacking. The monster continues attacking relentlessly, giving the espers no respite. Then, a windstorm begins to swirl around the battlefield, destroying everything in its path. Xiangshan, aboard a helicopter, warns everyone to retreat because he was going to detonate that monster in the sky. Sing quickly looks up, noticing something different, wondering if that was Senior Nan's voice. 3 minutes earlier, Xiangshan had ordered Lo Zhang to handle the artillery and provide fire support, and his friend asked what he was planning to do. Nan warns that the Sinnoh was not ordinary and that he needed to create a bomb because the prodigies would fall, but his friend tries to stop him, saying that seeking destruction was not the answer. The man replies that it was his only choice, for if the prodigies fell, everything would go wrong. Lo Zhang looks at his friend with concern, but he says he will follow his command. Xiangshan shouts at the monster, declaring that it would taste human explosives. Xin yells for him to stop, but the commander orders him not to stand still and let his sacrifice be in vain. Senior Nan states that at this point in the war, everything would be in the hands of the children, and just as he is about to press the button, he says that he will be the first to leave. But a forbidden wooden spell is cast, holding the helicopter in place and stopping him. Ziying appears, holding Chu Tian in his arms, and commands his spell to return the helicopter, telling him to be careful since his father was there, and Xiangshan notices something different, realizing that was his son's voice, and seeing him through the window as he flew across the sky. The prodigies shout for their benefactor, surprised that he had arrived, and the Sinnoh leader tries to attack him. But Ziying throws Chu Tian to Xing and orders him to be careful, because he must disable all satellite communications, and the genius Chu agrees with him. The commander asks Xing who that man was and why they needed to shut down the satellites, but the prodigy simply states that he would obey him. In the defense line's command center, the informants report that they lost contact with the 7th line of defense and should establish immediate communication. Su Chenying says that just now, a giant tornado appeared, and he fears that the prodigies are in danger, wondering if the 7th defense has fallen. Ziying dodges the Xeno leader's attack, then looks ahead and activates the full power of the Azura talent. Everyone on the battlefield is shocked by the impact of the sinister energy being generated, but the creature's sword begins to fragment as Ziying grips it. The young man states that in this place, they had an A-rank Xeno sword titan. With his expression changing, he declares that it had been a long time since he had seen it. Wang Zai wonders if that was the mysterious Azura they had been talking about, as he also used forbidden spells, questioning whether he was a dual-class Esper, but Chang states that he was on a completely different level. The commander asks what the young man meant by that, but he is soon shocked as he looks forward, because an army of beasts begins to surround the Xeno leader. An undead aura appears around the prodigies, and Wang Zai wonders what it was. The battlefield turns black and green as the beasts and ghosts encircle the Xeno leader, and the commander finally understands what it meant. Then, Emperor Wu appears, calling upon the Han Dynasty army to advance with him. Qin Shi Huang shouts for his dynasty's army to fight with all their might and not fall behind Han. So Ziying orders all prodigies and soldiers to use this chance to heal because he would handle this wave. Xing commands the army to retreat for now because he was sure that the senior would take care of everything. The Xeno leader declares that Ziying possessed an exceptional talent that could not be underestimated, nor should he show mercy, and attempts to attack him. Ziying effortlessly dodges the monster's sword strike, surprising the creature that its attack was avoided. Ziying smirks at it and activates the Azura Berserker mode, circling the creature's arm and cutting everything in his path. He uses the Dragon Slayer to wound the creature's neck, then stops on the ground while slicing the monster into pieces, thanks to his Hell on Earth ability. The monster's remains fall to the ground, and the prodigies comment that he defeated it quickly. However, even though Ziying was powerful, the Sword Titan would not be defeated so easily. The body parts begin to merge, and the soldiers deduce that the monster was transforming, taking on a spherical form with multiple eyes. Ziying mocks it, stating that it had finally revealed its final form, and now it was easier to find its weak point since all its power was concentrated in the energy core. The monster's body begins to turn. Xiangshan orders his son to pay attention as a smoke cloud starts covering the battlefield. Then the young man presses his fingers together and casts a forbidden wind spell charged 50 times, launching a tornado toward the monster. The energy surges back toward the creature as Ziying charges forward. The young man uses his forbidden electricity spell, overloaded 50 times, heading into the center of the tornado with his sword while wielding the Azura D1 blade. Ziying slices the creature in half with his ability, leaving only a core floating in the sky. He asks what the monster was planning to do. Then he presses his fingers together and uses the forbidden wood spell, creating wooden structures from the ground, which advance toward the core to restrain it, while Ziying dashes forward wielding his Azura sword. leaping and executing his hell on earth move. The people watching the impact from afar wonder if the young man was a god because he was incredibly powerful. Ying says that his forbidden spell wasn't limited to just wood, and Exongshen remarks that his son was truly terrifying. Zion commands the spirits to advance, and the beasts to form a circle, clearing a 1 kilometer wide path laterally and 30 kilometers from the center because it was time to create formations. He touches the ground and creates 1.5 million elemental key sword formations, firing them within a 30-kilometer radius. The young man orders the beasts to form the circle immediately, while he creates another 1.5 million formations of twisted spikes, ice bite, and thunder barrage, covering the same 30-kilometer radius. A stone structure begins to rise thanks to the Forbidden Earth Element spell. Then Zion recites that from the primordial chaos of heaven and earth, the Elder shall rise again while he flies atop a stone dragon. The young man creates 3 million formations to amplify the undead over a 300-kilometer area. The armies begin to restore themselves and grow stronger. Thanks to the range of the attack, the soldiers shout that there was no turning back, and this was their chance. They had to advance with unstoppable force. Zion levels up to a level 5 formation master, then states that this ability arrived at just the right time, creating 3 million formations of colossal beast slaughter and ordering them to activate. However, the system warns that he does not have enough stones left, as only 36 million remain. Zion questions why he has no more stones and whether he was overdoing it on defense. The young man says that conserving resources would be better, but soon changes his mind and with a smile, creates 3 million formations amplified tenfold. The formation strikes the battlefield. The beasts become stronger as time passes. Zion remarks that he only had 6 million stones left, but that was more than enough to place amplification formations throughout the city. He runs, placing his hand on a wall, saying that this was his final card. Then, using a 50 times amplification formation overloaded with 100,000 units, covering a 30-kilometer area throughout the city. The soldiers shout that their benefactor had created an extremely powerful amplification formation, and they could feel the energy surging. Chang says that this was the final card for the 7th defense, and Wang Zhe states that he finally understood who he was, because he was a god with 5 abilities in one body. The hair of the Su family says that it was ironic because humans were strange. They begged gods to save them, but when one appeared, they found it easier to succumb to fear. Ying says that their benefactor held nothing back. Sui comments that he trusted the inner territories, and Chang affirms that the senior instructed them to leave everything to him. Since there were only 3 hours left until dawn, they should use that time to rest and heal so they wouldn't waste the senior's effort. Zion touches the wall and says he was out of source stones, but he still had strength left, and since he was just an Azura, he would take care of all the aliens. The young man charges across the battlefield, cutting down the remaining Xenos with a smile. Then, Xiangshan, watching from afar, says he was proud of his child. Lao says that he truly should be because his son had saved his life and shouldn't be called a child. He was a divine prodigy. Old Nan asks if he should start calling his son father, and his friend bursts into laughter as the battlefield turns red. Zishan states that Chu Tian was merely exhausted and not in life-threatening danger, because she was inside and her brother was outside. So Xingyi didn't need to worry. He should just rest and wake up in 2 days. The prodigy agrees and says he is grateful that she is there, but he couldn't waste his time and energy since he was weak. Sishan asks if he ever heard that intelligent minds often fall early, but says that she wouldn't be able to convince him, so Xingyi should do his best, as she would take care of the wounded outside, and Xingyi tells her to go. The girl says that deep down, her brother was grateful for him. The prodigy with a smile says that he knew that. Then Chu Tian wakes up and calls for her brother, who notices her awakening. The girl asks how long she was unconscious and how the battle was going because Zhang's abilities required source stones, and she was worried. Sing repeats about the source stones, but he stands up and asks his sister to wait, as he would be back soon. Outside, the Xenos pile up in heaps of bodies, destroyed by Zhang. The breathless young man says that he was finally done, and the moment was near, as he had done all of this in just one night. But Xingyi appears behind him, saying that Tiener had woken up and that Zion could leave, making the young man question his presence. The prodigy says that the annihilation formation in the front and the beasts with spirits in the back were the man's strategy, but he should return to his battlefield, because they would buy time while they could and do their best to stay alive until they reunited with Zion, since amplification was his final card. The young man says that Xingyi was truly meticulous in handling everything, and asks if he was tired, but the prodigy says he was happy to do it. So Zion thanks him, calling him brother, and the prodigy says that before he left, an old soldier had asked him to deliver a message, where he said for his son to find him after the war ended because he would cook his specialty, and the young man says he understood. Sing extends his hand and says he also had something, handing him a letter from Xiao Shan. stating that he had gained even more respect for his brother. At the slaughterhouse during a snowy night, Zion defeats several monsters and says that his method had become slow and he needed to tame beasts faster now, as he only had 80 million stones left. He notices that the summoned spirits were at the front line, so he needed to replenish them quickly because the Xenos would come back stronger and the 6th defense had become useless. Outside, the workers comment that strange things were happening after losing the signal with the 7th defense yesterday. Lai remarks that the place seemed cursed, and Wang says it was divine intervention. Xiao Liu says that, strange as it was, many words were mutating in the northeast. Wang comments that it wasn't just the plants because she felt something awakening since she was working more efficiently, and all the workers seemed to have endless energy. Zion reflects that every time a portal opened, the Earth's spiritual energy increased, and with more aliens appearing, the land was awakening. However, this wasn't necessarily bad, so Xiao Liu waves at him and asks if he slept at the slaughterhouse, but Zion replies that he was heading home to sleep now. During the night, the snow continues to fall. Zion meets with Chu Tian and says they were going to Meteor Valley because it was time to tame a group of level 7 giant eagles. In the sky above the valley, an eagle soars. A person hanging from its legs says that a storm was coming with a group and he couldn't protect the valley. The eagle descends to human height and begins to chase them. A man caught in its claws uses his great fled punch ability, striking the eagle's chest with his blow but shouting that even as a level 5 Esper, he didn't cause any damage. The mutant keeps tightening its grip on the eagle, and the man begs for someone's help, asking if none of the cowards would help their friend in danger. But a portal opens above the eagle, and the man wonders what it was. Zion appears above the water alongside Chu Tian and strikes the beast. He activates his energy to quickly tame it, and commands the Iron Giant Eagle to follow his orders and not attack cities or humans, as they would guard Meteor Valley and gather source stones. The system notifies him that he has leveled up to a level 9 beast tamer and can now tame level 8 beasts. Zion is impressed as he is finally mastering another ability at its peak level. The man in the eagle's claws asks if he was the legendary beast tamer of the Northeast, but Zion says he forgot about him and tells the eagle to release him. The eagle lets the man go, dropping him in free fall. Zion complains that the eagle was stupid. It was big but had no brain because the human had no wings. So he smacks the eagle and orders it to hurry and rescue the man. The beast grabs the man with its beak, and Zion asks if he is okay. The man thanks him for saving him and says it was just a minor injury. Zion asks who he is, and Huang Jie responds that he was not alone, but everyone else fled from the eagle. He was from the Huang clan and a subordinate of the prodigy Huang Xiao, sent to explore and claim the Spirit Mountains because they contained a vast amount of spiritual energy. And prodigies from various families were advancing to the northeast to claim the Spirit Mountain and tend to their cultivation. Zion realizes that the peak of energy comes from the portal and thinks that if he summons a wave of spirits, he can raise mountains and elevate 1 million people to the divine level. He tells the boy to return to the Huang clan, stating that he had a significant use for the mountains and that no one was permitted to take them, causing the man to question him. Because if anyone disobeyed, it didn't matter which clan they were a prodigy of. They would be sent to the beyond without any mercy. As the eagles landed behind their master, Jia said he would deliver the message immediately. A scream is heard from the mountains, and Zion wonders what that sound was, wanting to know if it came from Huang Jia's companions. So he jumps onto an eagle and commands it to check quickly. Zion notices a venomous mutant lizard beside a skeleton, then says that it was the perfect time to tame another beast, but the lizard looks at the man flying above. The young man jumps off the eagle and says that the Xenos had their rooting behemoths, and now they had venomous lizards, striking the lizard and taming it. He manages to tame 10 million level 8 mutant lizards thanks to the system, and commands them not to attack cities or harm humans, as they would guard Meteor Valley and gather source stones. Zion looks around and says that everyone had lost their lives, and these guys seemed disloyal and cowardly, so they wouldn't be of much help. But he calls Chu Tian to go to the Tang Dynasty tombs, and the girl agrees. Zion states that the Tang Empire shocked the world with its army and calls upon the emperor and general of the dynasty, as he would defeat all enemies. The spirits appear, and Lai Yuan, the founder of the Tang Dynasty, answers Zion's call. Lai Shimin also responds to the young man and takes a spiritual form. Finally, Wu Zixin, the empress who reigned, answers his summons. Zion declares that the spirits of all who fell during the 300 years of the dynasty should heed his call and awaken, reciting that through the Dragon City, the flying general had fallen, and no enemy would claim their land. Necromancy rises to level 6, and Zion now commands 30 million soldiers of the Tang Dynasty. He tells their majesties that he proposes for the 2 emperors and the empress to take charge of the army, and divide the forces equally because he awaits their arrival. And anyone who stands in their way should try to speak first, but they should also be ready for war, defeating any who persist. The prodigy of the Huang clan, Wang Xiao states that the mountain belongs to no one but the first who occupies it on their own. Wang Jie says that the divine-level beast tamer was in the northeast, and for their safety, they should leave. But Ziev says that was just media hype because he was a level 10 electricity prodigy, and the others should fear him, because he might have tamed the beasts in Meteor Valley. But Moda Mountain was a place of abundant spiritual energy where he would cultivate. And the other clans knew that the place belonged to him, so if any tamer dared to go there, he would make sure they never returned. Xiang appears and asks how he planned to ensure he never returned. The prodigy of the Huang clan turns and asks if he was the cowardly beast tamer people were talking about, who arrived alongside a child. Wang Jie says that he delivered the message, but his master refused to listen. Then Xiao shouts that Jia brought disgrace to the Huang clan and should get lost because he never wanted to see his face again. Xiang provokes the prodigy, saying that honestly, his servant had more brains than he did. Surprising Xiao with his provocation, the young man says that if he was a prodigy, he would ask one last time if he intended to claim his mountain. Xiao laughs and says he wasn't just a mere prodigy, he was practically a sovereign king level, and if Xiang retreated, he might leave alive. Surrounded by wolves, the prodigy tells him not to think that a mere tamer like him could face him, as every time someone came to the mountain, they were defeated by him. Xiang agrees with him and says that since he was so stubborn, he shouldn't blame him for what happens next. Xiao questions the electricity, wondering if Xiang wasn't just a tamer but could also use electricity. The senior commands him to stop talking and wields his lightning blade. Jia shouts for his young master to be careful, but Huang grabs his servant and puts him in front of the attack as a shield. Xiang asks what kind of failed prodigy he was to be worse than animals. Xiao says that servants were nothing more than pawns who should sacrifice themselves for him. He challenges Xiang, saying that even though he knew lightning techniques, he would show him true celestial electricity, but the senior merely mocks him. Huang conjures a ball of energy in front of him and asks if Xiang was going to start begging for his life, but it was too late. However, the young man replies that he hadn't used his blade to avoid being seen as a bully, but the so-called prodigy really thought he was someone important. Then Xiang's electricity spreads throughout the entire area, and he says he will make him taste his own medicine. Huang Xiao declares that he is the incarnation of electricity and that no pathetic trick would impress him, but Xiang keeps mocking him and asks if that was really the case. He then uses a forbidden lightning spell, overloaded twice. The lightning strikes Huang's sphere, and he questions the use of forbidden spells. He says it was impossible as he gets hit, but Xiang tells him to learn what it means to meet his end as a disgrace, because no matter what he thought, whether level 10 or a sovereign king, it was nothing compared to his power. A voice comes from the sky, introducing itself as Huang Jushin, patriarch of the Huang family, asking who was causing trouble on his mountain. Xiang wonders if this was yet another person about to have their bloodline cut off. Yellow lightning begins to materialize in the area, and he orders Xiao to inform his father and people to relocate on the mountain, which was supposed to be a blessing. They then ask who Xiang was and why he had hurt the Huang family's prodigy. An elder informs the patriarch that he was trying to take over the mountains his son had claimed first. Jushin says to let the boy speak first because if he lied, he would personally cut him down. Xiang says this was expected from a patriarch, and that it was good he would let him explain clearly, because he was one of the 5 divine-level prodigies of the Northeast, the summoner of forbidden spells. Jushin wonders if he was one of those everyone had been talking about, and even the family is impressed that he was the one who had defeated the Xeno assassins. The young man explains that the mountain had been conquered by the 5 prodigies to ensure humanity's survival, warning Huang, but he refused and ruined the plan. Thus, the patriarch asks if he really did that, as Xiao was in the wrong. The elder questions whether the patriarch was intimidated by the title, saying he could get revenge for his son. However, the patriarch shouts that this was insolence. He strikes the elder's head, declaring that Xiao's actions caused the confusion. The elder kneels and begs for forgiveness, but Jushin commands him to be silent, stating that he had committed a mistake against humanity and asks who would fight against the aliens if not them. He then lowers his head and apologizes to Xiang, saying he did not mean to offend him and that they would leave. The young man simply accepts the apology. The Huang family turns and orders the father and son to be imprisoned, as they would be punished for their insolence, and the young man reflects that when the Huang family enters the battlefield, he will improve them. On Dragon Mountain, the spirits declare that the 5 prodigies have decreed that the mountain cannot be privately claimed. The same happens on Hua Mountain, where anyone who refuses to listen will be mercilessly defeated. Finally, on Kulan Mountain, the spirits see a monument stating that their descendants were wise and just. At the peak of Tangmodo Mountain, Xiang says that the time was near and activates the level 6 spirit resonance. A surge of red energy sweeps across the mountain. He recites a poem about crossing the 4 oceans and achieving victories over the infinite sky. Thus, once Qin passes, the whole world will face a cleansing storm. The spirits begin to reinforce themselves upon hearing the poem recited by their master. Explosions of power appear everywhere beyond the mountain. In the hospital, the poem can be heard. A terminally ill old man wonders where this triumphant march is coming from, but his companion says he doesn't know, only that he is growing stronger. At the 5th defense line, workers carrying pillars notice that they are stronger than usual, as if they were lifting toys. The same happens at the slaughterhouse, where Xiao Li realizes that she has truly awakened her powers. The workers say they are growing stronger by the second. Even an elderly man lifts several heavy sacks, saying he finally feels useful. News reports that last night people of all ages awakened spirit abilities, with an average level of 4, calling it a blessing. Additionally, newly awakened abilities transformed the primeval forest into a metal jungle, with wood espers being sent to investigate. Chu Tian praises Nan for orchestrating the mutation of all the people, but Zion denies it, saying that it happened because of the open dimensional rift and that they needed to act quickly. Since there was a major change in the primal forest, they had to go there, and Chu Tian agrees, activating teleportation. In the metal forest, the investigators comment that the situation is bad. It's like a new wave of beasts heading toward the city, and they wonder if they should retreat. Lai Li, a wood element esper, says he won't retreat before testing combat strength and tactics, using his vines to root the enemies. The vines rise from the ground as the investigators run, striking the tree but causing no damage. Lai Li reflects that he can no longer control them. The group is surrounded by the trees, and the investigators notice that while they aren't sentient, they are coordinating all their movements, so they prepare for battle and shout for everyone to attack with full force. Using his Forest Legion ability, the Iron Tree loses an arm, and the investigators realize they are level 7 or 8 creatures, something they cannot handle. Terrified, they insist on at least sending this information back to headquarters. Lai Li wonders if this would be his end as the tree moves its arm to attack, until it suddenly stops, overtaken by a red energy, and the investigator breaks into a cold sweat watching the scene, questioning whether the trees were not actually attacking them. The tree's once blue eye turns red, and the group wonders what is happening. From atop the mountain, a voice commands the metallic wooden behemoths not to attack cities or humans, and Lai Li wonders if they were bowing to the light. Zion tells the trees to protect the forest and gather source stones, thus taming 80 million level 8 behemoths and ascending to level 10 as a beast tamer. He gains the king's aura, which subjugates and tames beasts with the ancient aura of a beast god, emanating from the mountain. He also acquires Ancestral Awakening, which allows him to summon the progenitor to enhance combat power when his beast army reaches 100 million. Finally, he attains the Forbidden Beast Tamer spell, which lets him use the Storm of Life. Zion states that he has finally maximized his ability, and now taming sea beasts is the next step since he will use today's resources to place formations in the 5th defense. But suddenly, the young man feels a sharp headache. He collapses to the ground, and Chu Tian rushes to him, asking what was wrong. She uses her teleportation to take her friend to the dormitory at the slaughterhouse. A spatial aura rises over the mountain. At home, Zion wakes up and asks what happened, and Chu Tian explains that he passed out in the forest and scared her. He complains about having slept for an entire day at a time like this, but the girl points out that he hadn't been resting at all while taming all those beasts and spirits. Because no matter how strong he was still human, and the young man agrees, compared to the Xenos, humanity was weak. Chu Tian says that he carries the weight of the world in his eyes, and she wants to help, but she feels useless. Zion places his hand on the girl's head and apologizes for making her worry, but he assures her that he is not alone. He has her, his family, and his friends. Moreover, Chu Tian has helped him more than she realizes, as he wouldn't have come this far without her. The girl says that if he keeps calling her Little Chief, she will stop overloading herself, and since they are heading to the 5th defense, she will take him there. At night in the 5th defense, Zion creates 10 million flaming fire and elemental key sword formations, covering 200 kilometers. He states that he teleported all his source stones from the slaughterhouse, Meteor Valley, and the primal forest, asking if it was enough. However, it was already more than enough to fortify the entire defense line. Thus, he continues by creating 20 million Ice Bite level 3 and Earth Spirit formations, covering an area of 300 kilometers. Finally, he opens 30 million Thunder Barrage formations over another 300 kilometers, reaching formation level 7. Zion declares that he has completed the formation wall, leveled up, and will soon finish the projects, allowing him to create formations and spells to protect the 5th defense. The The latest news reports state that after the mass awakening, the development of northeastern infrastructure has accelerated, and the Grand Canal has already been completed. On top of a building, some people comment that they can't believe the Zhao family came out of seclusion for the 3 major projects, and Qian Bing and Sun Lei want to destroy them. Zhao asks Qian and Sun if they wouldn't want to do a broadcast while showcasing this shameful act of the nation. Thus, a new report talks about the 3 prodigies heading to the northeastern projects. The sea was turbulent without human interference, but Zion uses his ability and says that, as expected of a great nation, he had the opportunity to use a forbidden spell, and this would be the battlefield of humanity's defeat. He uses a level 5 water spell while creating a reddish aura in his hand. Then, clapping his palms together, he unleashes the water dragon attack. The spell begins to stand out, writing letters in the air. Next, the water rises and forms a water creature in front of Zion. He commands the water dragon to attack, and then moves his hand forward, activating the Azura mode, which makes energy surround the magical being. Zion tries to attack, but the dragon defends against the blow, so he uses the forbidden water spell to stop the dragon. The water creature dissipates in front of him. Zion comments that it was good because a simple level 5 spell could defend against the Azura form in this mode, and if combined with the power of the Grand Canal, it would be an enhancement to his strength. The young man clenches his fists and uses the water dragon spell again, but this time with a 5,000 times overload. Thus, he ascended to the 6th level of Forbidden Spell Summoner, with the requirement to level up being casting 6,000 spells. Zion comments that his ability had reached level 6, and that it shouldn't take long to be fully maximized. The 3 prodigies start their broadcast and say they were above the Grand Canal, and it was time to give the people what they really wanted. Zhao tells Qian and Sun that he would take care of destroying the canal, but Tuan refuses and asks to take on this task first. Sun laughs and tells him to wait. Then he activates his true fire spell, creating a dragon. His friends say that Sun was playing dirty, but if everyone wanted action, they should work together. They use their reverse current magic, forming a giant sword and a land-splitting attack that creates dragons. People comment that they were 3 prodigies at the Sovereign King level, and that a single canal wouldn't be enough to stop them. At the same time, on Tang Modao Mountain, Ziying says that, as expected of the mountain's power, the energy of the spirits was growing stronger. Chu Tian asks about the awakened citizens and whether they would become stronger, and the young man agrees, until he sees something in the sky, as if 4 shots were fired. The girl asks how he bent in midair, but Ziying says it was bad because that familiar feeling was from an A-rank Xenos, wanting to know if more assassins had been sent. He then feels a vibration in his brain, saying that the water spell in the canal was out of control, deducing that the aliens had discovered his plan. However, if they had already found out, there was no reason for him to keep hiding, so he activates the canal's forbidden spell. Sun flies over the water and says that the canal was insignificant and that they should just evaporate it, and Kan says it was a simple task to do so. Zhao notices something different in the water and asks if they were also seeing the change in flow. The water begins to stir and gather, forming a dragon surrounded by reddish energy. The prodigies scream to run while wondering why there was a forbidden spell in the canal. Meanwhile, the viewers of the broadcast wonder if that was the secret power of the Northeastern Project. Thus, the 3 friends fall to the ground outside the water. Zhao looks ahead, surprised, because the dragon didn't seem like it was going to stop, and his friend screams for help beside him. Ziying arrives from behind and asks why there were no aliens there. Then he touches the air and commands his spell to cease. Wanting to know who the boys were and why they were trying to cause destruction, Zhao explains that he was a prodigy from the inland. The young man interrupts him and says they were ignorant fools, but the boys get up and say that with the senior there, they finally understood. Ziying, however, thinks that they were 3 sovereign king-level prodigies who had come out of seclusion, and that the aliens must be targeting their homes, so he asks them to take him to their clans. The 3 are surprised by the request and seem hesitant. However, the senior says that they should do so unless they wanted their clan to be annihilated, so they repeat about being exterminated, and fearfully, they yield to the senior. On the Sky Summit Mountain during the night, fire reveals itself in the forest. Zhao falls to the ground, asking about his family, and Kan comments that the Zhao clan had just been destroyed. But Ziying says that it was the work of an A-rank Xenos, just as he had feared. However, it was not the time for mourning, and if Zhao wanted revenge, he should come with him, so he asks Chu Tian to take him to the Kan family. The same thing happened on Phoenix Mountain, with fire consuming everything, and they then decided to go to the Sun Clan. The state of the Sun Clan still had the Xeno there, the flaming sky eagle, which spewed fire at the structures. Suddenly, a fire attack strikes the alien, and it screams that it had burned his family and would now be defeated by him, for they would go to hell together, thus, using his detonation ability. The attack self-destructs, and Sun screams at that moment for his clan leader, cursing the alien for acting that way while the other prodigies prepare for battle. The eagle grumbles that they were small, weak humans without power, nothing more than bodies waiting to lose their lives. Zion advances from behind the beast, his sword ready to strike, saying that today he would show what humans are truly capable of. The three prodigies use their water, earth, and fire abilities to attack the eagle, but the beast dodges in the air, avoiding the attacks. Then, moving its wings, it creates a gust of wind that pushes the prodigies away, and Zion shouts that with the three of them injured, they should just watch. He attacks the eagle from above using his Azura counterweight ability, then slashing it while activating his berserker mode. The eagle is forced to retreat under the cuts of sinister energy. The prodigies notice the Azura energy and wonder if he was the Azura of the Northeast, rather than a forbidden spell summoner. But the A-rank Xenos prepares to unleash a fire blast, launching its attack at Zion, but at the last moment, Chu Tian shouts for teleportation. Being held by the little girl's hands, Zion thanks her for her hard work. Then he strikes the eagle in the back using the demon-slaying Azura. Itsano grumbles breathlessly that he had done a good job. As it falls, it says that Zion was worthy, not of death, but of enslavement. He asks what kind of enslavement it spoke of because he would make the Xenos swallow its own words. Thus, using the Dragon Slayer, which materializes a dragon of sinister energy on his back, the dragon charges toward the eagle, which asks if it could simply heal from something since it would tear that power of his to pieces. Transforming into a sphere and calling Zion an arrogant human, it then collides with the dragon. The eagle returns to its normal form and orders Zion to perish, but the young man evades the blow and prepares his sword using the Hell on Earth ability, slashing the eagle in half, which calls him useless and a spark. Without giving it time to react, Zion uses the Ice Bite formation with a 50,000 times overload, sending the eagle to damnation along with its spark. Kanan comments that the eagle was frozen and shattered, and Jao wanted to know how the Azura knew the formations. Zion looks down and points his finger, using the amplification formation to magnify the target tenfold, striking the three prodigies, who agonize in pain. The young man descends from his flight and says that this battle was theirs, with both strength and weakness, for the ice would only last a short time, and this was the chance for the boys to get their revenge with their own hands, because after avenging their clans, they should go to the fifth line of defense to prepare for war, since the great enemy was waiting, the greatest enemy of all humanity. New reports mention the 4 A-class Xenos found in the territories of 5 ancient clans, but that 3 geniuses managed to handle them. People cursed the aliens because it wasn't enough to attack the borders. They also struck from behind, and this attempt was even more brutal. They pray for the divine-level prodigies. From atop the mountain, Zion tells Chu Tian that they would collect source stones and head to the Eastern Sea to tame some beasts and deal with the assassins. Then he prepares his ability and recites a poem for the east of the endless ocean, ordering all beasts to hear his decree and kneel to serve only him, sending waves of domestication energy to all beings in the ocean. The system announces that he has tamed 70 million swordfish, 20 million tiger sharks, and 10 million level 10 great white sharks. He continues reciting, saying that with this sound that shakes the heavens and forces a lunar eclipse, he summons the whetstones. Then a whirlpool begins to form in the water, creating chaos that grows larger than Zion. From a distance, the young man comments that not even he could escape easily, and Chu Tian says they needed to see if the assassins dared to come. Len Changkong, who was watching the sea while drinking coconut water, was impressed, saying that there was an ocean beast frenzy unlike anything he had ever seen before. He immediately ordered the entire clan to prepare for battle and await his signal, to which his servant accepted the command. Then he used his water manipulation magic to create a dragon and soared above it. He declared that his land family had guarded the Eastern Sea for generations and would not allow the sea beasts to rebel, advancing toward the whirlpool. However, the water suddenly dropped, surprising Changkong. Changkong looked ahead with apprehension. He was surrounded by beasts of various species and wondered how this was possible since they were supposed to be enemies. Something was definitely wrong. Zion, controlling them from a distance, remarked that they had targeted the wrong person. Chu Tian added that the senior should not forget to order them not to attack the city or humans. Following this, he commanded the beasts to stand down, and Changkong noticed that their hostility disappeared, wondering if this was the work of the beast-taming prodigy from the northeast. Then 3 dragons flew beneath the moon, capturing his attention. One of the dragons addressed the master of the ocean, stating that if he did not become a slave, he would lose his life, as the ocean beast's whetstone had arrived. Changkong questioned whether all these assassins were after him and speculated that they must have mistaken him for the beast tamer. The three Xenos then landed on the water. The prodigy of the land family told them to advance, as this was bound to happen sooner or later, and fighting against the divine beast tamer's enemies was an honor. However, the beasts tamed by Zion began leaping out of the water. They started encircling the dragon, and Chang Kong wondered whether they had initiated the battle, trying to determine if this was the beast tamer's doing. Zion instructed the swordfish to take care of the cyclical demon turtle. The tiger sharks were to handle the thorn serpent. Finally, the great white sharks were tasked with eliminating the glacial dragon. The dragon surged forward, roaring that they were mere insects. It unleashed a freezing blast against the beasts. The front of the sea was completely frozen by its attack. At the same time, the thorn serpent cursed the tiger sharks, calling them insects. Then it began to twist its body, executing an attack it called the giant barrage of stingers. As the battle raged on, the cyclical demon turtle sneered at the swordfish, calling them futile. It used an earth-based magic to cause a collapse upon the beasts. Zion watched the battle from a distance, commenting that these sea beasts could hold off anything below rank A without giving them time to breathe. However, against a rank A, they were out of their league, so he infused his arm with energy. He launched an amplification formation, increasing power 50-fold and extending across 700 nautical miles. The formation's energy began spreading across the ocean, making Chang Kong wonder what it was. The glacial dragon was about to attack, so the prodigy declared that they had defeated the beasts and were now coming straight for him. But he was ready to face the monster and would fight until his last breath. He prepared his water blasts, eager to see whether the dragon could freeze him before he landed a blow on the creature. The dragon unleashed its freezing blast against the prodigy to halt the attack. After being frozen, Chang Kong cursed the dragon for having such immense power that even his water dragon could not withstand it. Then he was sent flying backward, bleeding from the monster's strike. The creature pressed forward, giving the genius no time to recover. But the amplification continued expanding through the sea. Then the sharks lunged toward the glacial dragon, biting the beast and catching it by surprise. Chang Kong stood up, his aura turning a deep red. He questioned whether this was the amplification formation of the formation prodigy. Utilizing his water manipulation technique called Endless Ocean, a tsunami rose against the dragon, which denied what was happening until the very last second, calling them insects in its eyes as it was torn apart by the attack. The thorn serpent was also neutralized, along with the cyclical demon turtle. Zion commented that the battle power was nearly perfect, as even S-rank aliens would be defeated by the ocean. He then told Chu Tian to bring Lan Chang Kong closer because he had something to tell them, to which the little girl agreed, curious about the reason behind the action. Chang Kong, now above the water, expressed his gratitude to his seniors for saving his life. He asked if they could reveal themselves so he could personally offer his thanks. Chu Tian appeared above the prodigy, stepping through a portal, and Chang Kong wondered if the legendary senior was actually a child. However, the girl simply looked at the man. She grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him through her portal. Chang Kong asked who the senior he was speaking to was, but Zion ordered him to just listen and not ask questions. He then asked if Chang Kong could take responsibility for using the Eastern Sea to lure and eliminate the aliens, to which the prodigy replied that he would dedicate his life to it. Thus, the senior prepared his finger and stated that he would grant him the power of an internal amplification tenfold. Touching Chang Kong's forehead, he declared that from that day forward, he was the master of the Eastern Ocean, commanding 100 million beasts, and his duty was to annihilate the aliens. However, Chu Tian pointed to the sky and told his brother to look, as a void portal was forming in the 7th line of defense. Calling out to his brother and to all those present, dozens of single-eyed beasts emerged from the portal. The spirits warned that the aliens' classic forces were approaching, and Senior Nan ordered a retreat, as the 6th defense had fallen and they needed to buy time for the soldiers' escape. Singh shouted for all units to converge on the 5th line of defense for the decisive battle, while the commander of the 7th line ordered conservation of strength. The prodigy of the Chu clan requested that Commander Wang lead the main force because he would hold the line and buy some time, activating the maximum amplification formation. Since he was going to hold out as long as possible for the main force to retreat, he created a field filled with characters in the sky. The spirits ordered Xing to retreat as the 5th line needed him, and the spirits would remain until the last soldier. Xing tried to argue, but Channy told him to heed the noble intentions of his seniors like a wise person. Amid the beast army, Xing declared that for the sacrifice of their ancestors and beasts, he would not falter in this battle for survival, and Chang added that the juniors would honor their ancestors and beasts. World News reported the complete retreat of the 7th Defense and the 6th line barely holding, with all soldiers gathering at the 5th Defense. Civilians cried out in the streets that God had given them courageous spirits for this decisive battle, and everything had led to this moment. Thus, the people of the Northeast would rise and defend the 5th line with their lives. In the project of the Burnt Celestial Stone, Zion stated that today he would complete its improvements and bring his plan to an end. Summoning the power of the source stones to come to him, he absorbed them completely. The energy from the stones surged towards Ziying, and he gained 100 million stones until reaching 10 trillion. In the land forest, the young man touched a stone and cast the forbidden gold spell, thus transforming the stone into water. He then used the forbidden iron spell at 100,000 times, stating that it overpowered water. When he reached the heart of the volcano alongside Chu Tian, Ziying extended his hand and commanded the lava dragons to rise and devour the sky to extinguish everything, using the forbidden lava spell amplified 100,000 times. Lava dragons ascended into the sky, creating a breathtaking scene. Ziying reached the peak of his forbidden spell abilities, acquiring the origin of the stars ability. The young man reflected that using a forbidden spell of such magnitude might be what Earth needed to endure. However, he would have to bear it and use it only at the critical moment. Thus, he stated that all that remained was to tame the beasts, summon spirits, and create formations, heading to the land of Inland, which was perfect for both. Ziying touched the ground and called upon his ancestors from the past, asking them to awaken. Wei rose and recited that from the east, bold heroes rode forth to suppress the darkness. Shu of the Three Kingdoms stated that he would now return after waiting for ages. Finally, Wu spoke of the wisdom of a rock, the power of the empire, and the legend that echoed. Song stood up, finishing his recitation about the rising sun and its brightest glow over the mountains. Yuan rose and declared that his dynasty would impose its fury upon the land, joined by Ming and King, who rose and spoke of the history of heroes and legends. Ziying had awakened the spirits of the ancient heroes and reached the pinnacle of necromancy. He then called upon his honored ancestors to heed his summons and prepare for battle. The army began to march, and the senior recited another poem to activate his ability, using the ultimate beast-taming skill to summon venomous insects and serpents of the same kind, declaring that all mutant beasts must listen and obey him from that moment forward. Ziying reached the highest level of beast taming, unlocking 3 abilities and commanding 1 billion beasts. He commanded the ancestral power to rise and amplify all his beast troops. Then, raising his sword, he ordered them to follow him to the 5th line of defense. The young man coughed up a mouthful of blood shortly after using his power, falling to his knees on the ground, while Chu Tian told him he was pushing himself too hard and couldn't keep going like that. Ziying replied that he had to continue no matter what because there was no time to waste. The little girl tried to argue with him, worried about an injury, but the man stood up, saying that only the formations remained and he needed to reach the 5th line. Chu Tian took him there. At dawn in the 5th defense of Great Xia, Ziying covered 10,000 kilometers with billions of formations, Infernal Key Sword, Hellfire, and Abyssal Horn, commanding them to layer upon layer, creating lethal formations to protect his homeland. As his tree began to emerge, Ziying reached the level of Genesis God Formation Master and then began sweating coldly. The system alerted him that he had maximized the 5 supreme abilities into one and began to scream as the system modified his body. He collapsed to the ground from the impact of his abilities. Chu Tian tried to approach, calling out to him, but Ziying was in his Azura form, screaming in pain. Singh arrived at the 5th line of defense and informed Senior Nan that he had returned along with the other prodigies. Now with whitened hair, Ziying said they had arrived just in time, and Chu Tian ran toward her brother. The little girl hugged her brother and said the senior's hair had turned white, to which the prodigy responded that she had done well, and he was already there. Ying approached her benefactor and asked what had happened, and Ziying explained that it was the result of his preparations. Chang questioned whether he was finally going to lay all his cards on the table. The young man smiled and said that was exactly what he intended to do. The news reported that the alien forces had broken through the defenses, with several countries falling and millions of espers perishing. Ziying climbed to the highest point of the 5th defense and addressed the soldiers and citizens, saying that the aliens were approaching, and before the battle, he had something important to say. He revealed that all the so-called 5 divine-level prodigies were actually him, causing the civilians to ask who he truly was. The young man placed his hand on his mask and began to introduce himself, finally revealing that he was Nan Ziying. The people questioned how the deserter whom everyone had doubted could be a prodigy, and if this was some kind of joke. Zhang Yuan, rising from his home, said he had his suspicions, but this was unbelievable. Su Lang at home asked if he was the Azura man, and Kier called it an insult. Lian Yi remarked that he was pretending to be her beast tamer, and Shanonen agreed, calling him shameless. However, Ziying used his 5 powers to prove to the people that it was true. Then he asked if he could continue his speech now. The people were astonished that it was the truth, and Zishan said that this was the moment for her brother to shine, while Kexiongshen stated that his son had worked hard. Singh murmured that he had finally admitted it, and Chang commented that he was truly a show-off. Ziying announced that the aliens were near and led the battle, maintaining the amplification formation while Wang Zai commanded the troops and the civilians evacuated. In the slaughterhouse, the members remarked that their leader was truly a genius and their savior. Then, the young man continued, stating that all military power was concentrated in the 5th line, and he had made the necessary preparations, but it still wasn't enough against aliens ranked above S. That was why he needed an Esper squad ready to sacrifice themselves against the aliens. He needed at least 10 strong Espers with complementary abilities. Chu Tian stepped forward, stating that she was 9 years old and an Esper with spatial powers, so once she entered the portal, she would find a place for Nan to rest. Singh introduced himself, saying he was 23 years old and his power was Aura Domain. Chang volunteered, stating that they could count on him since his ability allowed him to control puppets, and he could even curse some aliens. The Keen twins stepped forward, ready to fight with their plant-based powers. Even Lan Changkong appeared, declaring that he would not bring shame to his senior. With everyone gathered, dust began to rise from the ground, and a figure emerged. Zhang Yuan introduced herself, saying that her ability was cooking, and that Zhang should not forget about it. The young man thanked her and said he was happy she had joined. A Ferrari approached the scene. Then Su Lang appeared with Esper perception abilities, and Kier apologized. She introduced herself, explaining that she had the ability to rewind time by 15 seconds. Zishan approached her brother and said their father did not want to leave him alone, so she would go with him. And recently, she awakened healing abilities on the battlefield. Chen Lianyi and Su Xanonan also arrived at the group, saying that a single healer was not enough and that they should have a chance as well. Zhang thanked everyone and declared that the counteroffensive squad was officially formed, and the aliens were there, so the group had to prepare for battle. The young man used his formations and forbidden spells to block the aliens, alongside the attack of the beasts to slow their advance, and even the spirits attempted to counterattack. The soldiers stated that they were the reinforcement for the 5th line, and that no one could run from the aliens. Then Zion ordered the sacrifice squad to advance. Chu Tian created a massive portal through which they would enter the aliens' base, and the senior commanded everyone to follow, for they were about to put an end to this reign of evil.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.